Today we're going to be looking at every saddest moment of every SpongeBob character. So let's start with one of SpongeBob's most heartbreaking moments when Gary runs away in Have You Seen This Snail? SpongeBob gets a new paddleball toy and becomes completely obsessed with it. He ignores Gary for over a week, not even feeding him. Gary gets so hungry and sad that he packs his stuff and runs away from home. This whole situation shows how someone who loves their pet can still hurt them just by not paying attention. SpongeBob gets his Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy paddleball set in the mail. There's this challenge where you have to hit the ball almost 30 trillion times in a row. Sounds impossible, right? But SpongeBob takes it seriously because he thinks he's helping his favorite superheroes defeat the dirty bubble. Gary is just a regular pet snail who needs food every day. SpongeBob even brings home a big bag of snail food and leaves it right outside his door, so you know he cares about Gary. He just gets distracted. Things get worse and worse as Gary tries everything to get SpongeBob's attention. Gary meows when it's feeding time. SpongeBob ignores him. Gary meows louder. SpongeBob calls him a distracting sound. Gary jumps on the paddleball. SpongeBob throws him off and yells at him to go away. Poor Gary goes to check his food bowl and finds nothing but old crumbs with spiders crawling all over them. That's when Gary realizes SpongeBob hasn't fed him in days. So Gary does what any smart pet would do. He packs his tiny suitcase and leaves. The worst part is how polite Gary is about the whole thing. He doesn't trash SpongeBob's house or anything. He just writes a nice letter saying he needs to find someone who will actually remember to feed him. When SpongeBob finally snaps out of his paddleball trance, Patrick shows him milk that's been sitting there so long it turned solid. That's when SpongeBob realizes Gary is gone. The panic hits him hard. He searches everywhere and puts up missing pet posters all over town while this sad song called Gary Come Home plays. Meanwhile, Gary finds this old lady who thinks he's her missing pet, but she turns out to be trying to fatten him up so she can eat him. SpongeBob completely falls apart after losing Gary. He cries into the food at work, making customers complain about salty, crabby patties. He talks to a billboard with Gary's picture on it like it's real. Even Mr. Krabs notices something seriously wrong, which says a lot, because Mr. Krabs usually only cares about money. Patrick tries to help but makes things worse. He literally sees Gary at a store but gets distracted by scented pine cones instead of telling SpongeBob. This episode hit so hard because it felt real. Everyone's been so focused on something that they forgot to do important stuff. The episode made Gary feel like more than just a pet, he's SpongeBob's family. When Gary finally comes home and SpongeBob promises to do better, you actually believe him because losing Gary hurt so much. It showed that even cartoon characters can mess up badly and learn from it. Moving on to when Squidward's April Fool's prank in Fools in April goes way too far and leaves SpongeBob battered and crying. SpongeBob loves April Fool's Day and spends the whole day pulling harmless pranks on everyone at the Krusty Krab. Squidward gets so annoyed by SpongeBob's joy and laughter that he decides to show him what a real prank looks like. What starts as Squidward wanting to get back at SpongeBob for being too happy turns into something genuinely cruel. It's April 1st and SpongeBob is having the time of his life. He's pranking customers with silly jokes like giving someone a spoon instead of a fork or putting one ice cube in a drink instead of two. Everyone's laughing and having fun except Squidward. He's washing dishes in the kitchen, getting more and more irritated by all the laughter coming from the dining area. SpongeBob even pranks his own tongue when it falls off, making everyone laugh even harder. Squidward tries putting tissues in his ears, but can still hear SpongeBob's obnoxious giggling through the restaurant's microphone system. The breaking point comes when SpongeBob's laughter becomes too much for Squidward to handle. He snaps and decides SpongeBob needs to learn what a real prank is all about. Squidward sets up an elaborate trap. He squirts mustard on the floor in a rope circle and attaches it to a heavy anchor hanging from the ceiling. When SpongeBob comes over to clean up the mess like the good employee he is, Squidward cuts the rope. What happens next is brutal. The rope catches both of SpongeBob's legs, and the falling anchor creates a chain reaction that sends SpongeBob flying around the entire restaurant. He slams into bags of flour, gets whipped around the dining area, crashes face first into walls, and even gets launched through Bubble Bass's rear end. The customers watch in horror as SpongeBob screams in genuine fear and pain. Squidward is rolling on the floor, laughing hysterically, even doing cheerleader moves while SpongeBob is getting destroyed. The prank ends with SpongeBob falling into a garbage can, coming out shaped like the can and covered in trash. SpongeBob doesn't laugh or smile. He just squeals sadly and runs out of the Krusty Krab crying. All the customers are disgusted with Squidward. One fish calls him an April Fool's jerk, and another says, "You stink." Everyone storms out in disappointment while Squidward tries to claim it was just a joke. Looking around at the damaged restaurant and bubble base with a hole in his butt, Squidward finally realizes the difference between SpongeBob's harmless pranks that made people laugh with him and his own cruel prank designed to hurt and humiliate. This moment changed how viewers saw Squidward. Sure, he was always grumpy, but this crossed a line into genuine cruelty. The episode showed that jealousy and bitterness can make someone do terrible things to innocent people. It also highlighted how SpongeBob's pranks were about bringing joy, while Squidward's was about causing pain. When Squidward struggled to apologize later, it felt earned because what he did was genuinely wrong, not just grumpy behavior. The next time we felt bad for SpongeBob was in Home Sweet Pineapple, when nematodes eat his pineapple house, forcing him to move back with his parents and leaving him crying as he buries the last piece of his home. SpongeBob loves his pineapple house where he lives with Gary. One morning, a bunch of hungry nematodes show up in Bikini Bottom. These little worm creatures eat everything they see, coral, trucks, whatever. They're like underwater bugs that won't stop eating. The problems start when the nematodes get thirsty. They see SpongeBob's pineapple house and think it looks tasty. They pull out straws and start drinking all the juice from his house. SpongeBob and Gary are sleeping inside, so they don't know what's happening. As the nematodes drink the pineapple juice, everything in the house starts getting smaller. SpongeBob's bed disappears, his alarm clock vanishes, and the walls close in on him. When SpongeBob wakes up, he thinks he got bigger, but then he realizes his house is shrinking. SpongeBob panics and tries to call Squidward for help, but his phone shrinks too and disappears while he's talking. He can only watch as the nematodes finish drinking his house until there's nothing left except a tiny pebble on the ground. The nematodes burp loudly and leave. Patrick shows up dressed fancy, asking if it's time to bother Squidward. He doesn't even realize what just happened. Squidward is happy because he thinks SpongeBob will have to move away. SpongeBob has nowhere to live now. He and Patrick try to build a new pineapple house, but they're terrible at it. Patrick keeps hitting his thumb with a hammer, and SpongeBob makes a house so small that only his nose fits through the door. SpongeBob tries sleeping at Patrick's rock, but Patrick has nightmares about spiders and keeps hitting him with the rock all night. Then he tries sleeping at Squidward's house, but Squidward kicks him out once he realizes what's happening. With no other option, SpongeBob has to call his parents to come pick him up. This is the saddest part. When SpongeBob's parents arrive, Patrick starts crying really hard and tries to stop their car from leaving. Squidward is dancing around celebrating that SpongeBob is leaving. SpongeBob takes the tiny pebble, the only thing left of his house, and buries it in the ground where his home used to be. He says it has too many memories. A tear falls from his eye onto the pebble. But here's the twist. The pebble was actually a pineapple seed. SpongeBob's tear helps it grow into a brand new house that crushes Squidward, who is still dancing around celebrating. This episode made viewers sad because losing your home is scary. SpongeBob worked hard to live on his own, and watching him lose everything and have to move back with his parents felt really unfair. The scene where he cries while burying that little pebble hit people right in the heart. Next up is when SpongeBob thinks he's ugly in Something Smells After Bad Breath, makes people avoid him. But Patrick convinces him the problem is his appearance, causing SpongeBob to become deeply depressed and hide in his house. SpongeBob wakes up on Sunday morning and decides to make a special ice cream sundae for breakfast. Problem is, he's out of ice cream, so he gets creative with what he has. He makes this disgusting sundae with ketchup, raw onions, and peanuts from a dying plant in his bathroom window. The whole thing gives him the worst breath you can imagine, but SpongeBob has no idea. SpongeBob's Sunday plan is simple: say hi to everyone in Bikini Bottom. But as soon as he starts talking to people, they run away screaming. The mailman literally breaks apart into smaller versions of himself trying to escape. A crossing guard abandons the kids she's supposed to protect. When SpongeBob greets a marching band, his bad breath forms into a visible stink ball that bowls them all over like pins. SpongeBob is completely confused about why everyone keeps running away from him. SpongeBob finds Patrick sitting on a bench and explains what's happening. Patrick can't smell the bad breath because he doesn't have a nose, so he has no clue what's really wrong. After going through some possibilities like SpongeBob's clothes and voice, Patrick comes to the worst conclusion: SpongeBob must be ugly. To prove it, Patrick holds up a mirror and tells SpongeBob to say hi to his reflection. The reflection smells the bad breath and literally breaks the mirror with a hammer to escape. This breaks SpongeBob's heart. He starts asking random people if he's ugly, causing a couple to bite onto a fishing hook to get away from him, and making a car crash when the driver's eyes water from the smell. SpongeBob becomes convinced he's hideous and goes home to hide. He sits in his dark house playing dramatic organ music while wearing a fake mustache and cape like he's some kind of monster. Patrick tries to cheer him up by telling the story of the ugly barnacle, a creature so ugly that everyone died. This makes SpongeBob feel worse. Patrick then gets SpongeBob to go on his roof and scream, "I'm ugly and I'm proud," to build confidence. They go to a movie theater to celebrate, but SpongeBob's breath kills some fish and makes others flee in terror. The truth comes out when Patrick eats some leftover sundae and gets the same bad breath. People start avoiding Patrick too, making him think he caught the ugly from SpongeBob. But when SpongeBob smells Patrick's horrible breath, he realizes they're not ugly, they just stink from that awful sundae. This episode hit viewers because it showed how cruel people can be when someone's different, and how easily we can believe we're the problem when others treat us badly. SpongeBob's depression felt real, and watching him hide in shame over something that wasn't even his fault was genuinely sad. It's a perfect example of how misunderstanding can cause unnecessary pain. Another time we felt bad for SpongeBob was in Pickles, when he forgets pickles on Bubble Bass's burger and completely loses his confidence and ability to cook. SpongeBob is at the top of his game at the Krusty Krab. He's making perfect Krabby Patties at lightning speed, calling out ingredients like first bun, then patty, followed by ketchup, mustard, pickles, extra onions, lettuce, cheese, tomatoes, and bun in that order, Satium. He can make 12 burgers in seconds without breaking a sweat. SpongeBob takes real pride in his cooking skills. It's what makes him special and gives his life meaning. The trouble starts when Bubble Bass walks into the restaurant. This guy is a notorious food critic who's known for being impossible to please. He orders this ridiculously complicated burger with a million specifications: double triple bossy deluxe on a raft, 4x4, animal style extra, shingles with a shimmy and a squeeze, light axle grease, make it cry, burn it, and let it swim. Even Squidward gives up trying to write it all down and just says, "We serve food here, sir." But SpongeBob is confident and makes the burger perfectly. Bubble Bass examines the burger carefully, takes a bite, and then drops the bomb, "You forgot the pickles!" The whole restaurant gasps. SpongeBob frantically searches through the burger looking for pickles, but they're nowhere to be found. Mr. Krabs has to give Bubble Bass his money back because of their guarantee, which makes him furious. The crowd is disappointed, and SpongeBob's perfect reputation is suddenly ruined. This one mistake breaks SpongeBob's brain completely. He can't remember how to make a simple Krabby Patty anymore. He tries over and over, putting ingredients in the wrong order: bun, mustard bun, ketchup shoe, mustard pan bun. He gets so confused, he can't even find the front door of the restaurant. Mr. Krabs sends him home, but things get worse. SpongeBob can't remember how to sleep in his bed, can't speak in the right word order, and his whole house becomes a disaster zone. Mr. Krabs visits and finds SpongeBob nailing bread to his table because he's lost all sense of reality. It takes days of practice with Mr. Krabs before SpongeBob finally remembers how to make a burger again. When he returns to work, Bubble Bass shows up to test him again. SpongeBob makes a perfect burger, but Bubble Bass claims there are still no pickles. Here's the kicker. SpongeBob discovers that Bubble Bass has been hiding the pickles under his tongue the whole time, along with pickles from the previous order and even someone's car keys. The guy was scamming the restaurant and psychologically torturing SpongeBob for no reason. This episode was heartbreaking because it showed how one cruel person can completely destroy someone's confidence. SpongeBob went from being a master chef to not being able to function as a human being, all because some jerk decided to mess with him. The fact that it was all a lie made it even worse. SpongeBob suffered for nothing. Let's dive into another heartbreaking SpongeBob moment from Squidward Strike, when SpongeBob gets fired after innocently telling Mr. Krabs about joining Squidward Strike. Mr. Krabs starts charging his employees for basic human functions like breathing, talking, standing, and even existing. Squidward gets a bill instead of a paycheck that charges him $21 total for doing normal things at work. SpongeBob, being SpongeBob, actually pays Mr. Krabs extra money thinking he owes it to him. This pushes Squidward over the edge, and he convinces SpongeBob they need to go on strike to demand fair treatment. Squidward explains that they should unite as workers and demand respect from their boss. SpongeBob gets excited about the idea even though he admits he doesn't know what a strike means. He's just happy to be part of something with Squidward. The problem is SpongeBob's complete innocence about workplace conflicts. He thinks going on strike sounds fun and exciting, like a party or celebration. The disaster happens when SpongeBob runs up to Mr. Krabs while he's sweeping and cheerfully announces, "Hey, guess what, Mr. Krabs? Me and Squidward are gonna go on strike." Mr. Krabs asks him to confirm what this means, making picket signs, protest speeches, demanding respect, and SpongeBob enthusiastically says, "Yeah," to everything. But instead of being impressed or scared, Mr. Krabs immediately fires both of them on the spot. SpongeBob ends up sobbing outside the Krusty Krab, sticking to the door like a suction cup because he's so devastated. He cries, "Squidward! You didn't tell me I was gonna get fired. Without the Krusty Krab, oh, Squidward, could you hold me? I think I'm gonna be sick." His whole world falls apart because his job means everything to him. The Krusty Krab is his life, his passion, his identity. Squidward has to keep pulling SpongeBob off the door as he sticks to it in different ways. First his arms and legs, then his face, then his whole front side where you can see his skeleton. SpongeBob is completely broken by losing his job, especially since he trusted Squidward and had no idea this would happen. He just wanted to support his friend and do the right thing. This moment made viewers feel terrible for SpongeBob because he got punished for trying to be a good friend and employee. He had no understanding of labor disputes or workplace politics. He was just following Squidward's lead because he trusted him. SpongeBob's pure heart and loyalty to both Squidward and Mr. Krabs put him in an impossible situation. Watching him cry and desperately cling to the restaurant door showed how much his job meant to him and how unfair it was that his innocence got him fired. Let's talk about another heartbreaking SpongeBob moment from pizza delivery when a rude customer rejects SpongeBob's pizza delivery and makes him cry after all his hard work. SpongeBob and Squidward get stuck delivering the Krusty Krab's first ever pizza after Mr. Krabs takes a last-minute order. SpongeBob is excited about making history with this delivery, but everything goes wrong fast. He backs up their delivery boat for miles because he panics about driving, leaving them stranded in the desert when the boat runs out of gas and drives away without them. What follows is an epic journey across the wasteland. SpongeBob keeps singing the Krusty Krab pizza song while they walk for hours. They get caught in a tornado, nearly get run over by a truck, and face starvation in the desert. Through it all, SpongeBob refuses to let Squidward eat the pizza. Even when they're both starving, he keeps saying it's for the customer, while protecting that pizza box like it's precious treasure. SpongeBob uses pioneer tricks he learned from movies to navigate, and even rides a boulder to get them to the customer's house. The crushing moment comes when they finally reach the customer's door. SpongeBob is so proud and excited, giving Squidward a thumbs up as he rings the doorbell. He cheerfully announces, "Congratulations, sir, your Krabby Patty pizza is here." The customer seems happy at first, saying he's been dying for one of these pizzas, but then his mood completely changes when he asks, "Where's my drink?" SpongeBob checks the order and there's no drink listed. The customer explodes with anger, yelling, "My drink? My Diet Dr. Kelp? Don't tell me you forgot my drink." When SpongeBob tries to explain the customer didn't order a drink, the guy goes ballistic. He screams, "How am I supposed to eat this pizza without my drink? Didn't you ever once think of the customer? You call yourself a delivery boy? Well, I ain't buying." Then he throws the pizza box right in SpongeBob's face and slams the door. SpongeBob's reaction is devastating. He tries to smile and stay strong at first, but then he completely breaks down. He drops the pizza box, falls to the ground, and starts sobbing uncontrollably while absorbing his own tears. This is total heartbreak from someone who gave everything he had to make a customer happy. The worst part is how unfair the whole thing was. SpongeBob went through hell to deliver that pizza, never gave up, and protected it with his life. The customer was wrong about the drink, but took all his anger out on SpongeBob anyway. Squidward was so outraged by how the customer treated SpongeBob that he grabbed the pizza and slammed it in the customer's face as payback. This episode showed viewers how cruel people can be to service workers who are just trying to do their job. SpongeBob's pure dedication and the customer's nasty response made everyone feel terrible for him. It perfectly captured how heartbreaking it is when someone's best efforts get thrown back in their face by an ungrateful person. Another heartbreaking moment we need to cover is in Grandma's Kisses, when SpongeBob has a complete meltdown and cries wanting to be treated like a baby again after people tease him for visiting his grandma. SpongeBob loves visiting his grandma's house where she spoils him with fresh cookies, milk, stories, and lots of love. When she drops him off at work, she gives him a goodbye kiss that leaves a pink lip mark on his forehead. SpongeBob walks into the Krusty Krab completely happy, thinking everyone's in a good mood because they're all laughing. But Squidward crushes his spirit by telling him they're laughing at him, not with him, because of the kiss mark on his head. The teasing gets brutal fast. One customer calls him Grandma's boy and makes kissing sounds while everyone laughs. Then he calls SpongeBob a big baby who wears diapers and lists off more baby stuff like sucking his thumb and playing with dolls. SpongeBob tries to defend himself, saying there's nothing wrong with getting kisses from your grandma, but the damage is done when Squidward sarcastically says, "I know someone who still likes you, your grandma." The whole restaurant erupts in laughter again. SpongeBob runs home crying, and Patrick convinces him he needs to act more grown up around his grandma. They put on fake sideburns and march over to tell Grandma that SpongeBob is an adult now, and the kissing has to stop. Grandma agrees to treat him like a grown-up, but this backfires horribly. While Patrick gets spoiled with cookies, stories, and a sweater with love in every stitch, SpongeBob gets steamed coral instead of cookies, a boring technical manual instead of story time, and unwrapped office supplies instead of presents. The breaking point comes when SpongeBob realizes what he's lost. After watching Patrick get all the love and attention he used to get, SpongeBob completely loses it. His fake sideburns fall off and he throws the biggest tantrum ever seen on the show. He screams, "I don't want to grow up," and starts crying hysterically while listing everything he wants back: cookies, milk, a sweater with love, diapers, his wagon, his teddy bear, Mr. Stuffykins, his rocking horse, and kisses on his boo-boos. What makes this scene so devastating is how SpongeBob cries and spins around like a lawn sprinkler, flooding the entire house with his tears. He's hyperventilating and completely breaking down because he realizes that trying to be a grown-up means giving up all the simple joys that made him happy. The flood of tears shows just how much pain he's in from losing his grandma's special treatment. This episode hit viewers hard because it showed the painful reality of growing up. Sometimes you have to choose between what makes you happy and what others think is appropriate. SpongeBob's complete emotional breakdown was heartbreaking because all he wanted was his grandma's love, but society made him feel ashamed of it. The message was clear. There's nothing wrong with wanting comfort and love, no matter how old you get. Now let's move on to our next character, Patrick, but before that, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Now let's shift focus to Patrick and one of the most heartbreaking moments for him in Nature Pants, when SpongeBob announces he's leaving to live with jellyfish, causing Patrick to break down crying and eventually have a complete mental breakdown trying to get his best friend back. SpongeBob decides he wants to give up his cold, industrial life to live naturally with the jellyfish after daydreaming about it at work. Mr. Krabs laughs at this idea, saying SpongeBob wouldn't last one day in the wild. This pushes SpongeBob to quit his job and prove Mr. Krabs wrong. He starts giving away all his possessions to his friends, preparing to leave Bikini Bottom forever. The emotional breaking point starts when SpongeBob begins handing out his belongings. Patrick is already getting teary-eyed when SpongeBob gives him a jar of mayonnaise and some old phone books, but then SpongeBob brings out the big moment he gives Patrick Ol' Reliable, his prized jellyfish net in a special case. This is when Patrick completely loses it. He starts trembling, gasping, and crying as he realizes his best friend is actually serious about leaving. When Sandy shows up and SpongeBob explains he's giving up his material possessions to live with jellyfish, Patrick can only watch helplessly as his world falls apart. SpongeBob takes off his pants behind a bush and runs away naked, buzzing like a jellyfish. While Squidward is indifferent and Sandy bets SpongeBob will be back in a week, Patrick is devastated. He stands there shaking and finally says, "Patrick's sad," which sounds simple but shows how completely broken he is. Things get worse when Sandy and Patrick try to lure SpongeBob back with a picnic. Sandy makes Patrick read from a script, trying to tempt SpongeBob with Krabby Patties, but Patrick can't handle the act. He breaks down mid-script, throws everything away, and desperately begs, "SpongeBob, come back. I miss you." When SpongeBob refuses and says he's happy living with jellyfish, Sandy has to physically drag the crying Patrick away as he screams, "No! SpongeBob!" Patrick's final breakdown is the most disturbing part. He returns to Jellyfish Fields with Ol Reliable, but now he's completely unhinged. With tears in his eyes, he tells SpongeBob, "If I can't have you as a friend, I'm gonna make you a trophy." He shows SpongeBob a jar labeled SpongeBob Friend that he plans to trap him in. Patrick chases SpongeBob through the fields, making war cries, trying to capture him with the net. When SpongeBob escapes into a jellyfish hive that Patrick can't reach, Patrick snaps Ol Reliable in half and walks away sobbing, saying, "I hope you're happy." This episode showed Patrick at his most vulnerable. His complete emotional breakdown revealed just how much SpongeBob means to him. The fact that Patrick was willing to turn his best friend into a literal trophy rather than lose him forever was both disturbing and heartbreaking. It demonstrated the unhealthy level of Patrick's attachment to SpongeBob and how he handles abandonment by becoming completely unhinged. Let's talk about Patrick's most heartbreaking moment in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie when he dies under the heat lamp with SpongeBob, using his last strength to comfort his best friend. SpongeBob and Patrick have just made it to Shell City to save Mr. Krabs and get Neptune's crown back. They think they've finally succeeded in their mission. They found the crown in what turns out to be a gift shop. But their celebration is cut short when the Cyclops, a scuba diver who collects sea creatures, captures them both and brings them back to his lair to turn them into dried-out souvenirs. The whole journey to get here was crazy. They traveled across dangerous lands, fought monsters, escaped from a biker bar, and survived all kinds of terrible things. They kept going because they believed in their mission and trusted each other. Now, they're so close to saving everyone back home, but it looks like they're going to die before they can finish the job. The situation becomes desperate when the Cyclops places SpongeBob and Patrick under an intense heat lamp. They're trapped on a table surrounded by other dead sea creatures that have been turned into knick-knacks. The heat is so strong that SpongeBob can barely move, saying, "The heat is so intense from this lamp that I can't move." Patrick responds, "Tell me about it," showing he's suffering just as much. They both realize they're going to die, and there's nothing they can do about it. The most devastating part comes when both friends start accepting their fate. SpongeBob's arm literally falls off from dehydration, and Patrick gently puts it back on, saying, "Don't mention it," when SpongeBob thanks him. This simple act shows Patrick's loyalty even while dying. Even when his own body's failing, Patrick still cares more about helping SpongeBob than himself. It's such a small gesture, but it shows everything about who Patrick really is. SpongeBob starts talking about how everyone was right. They really are just kids who are in over their heads. He says they failed everyone and never even made it close to the crown, not knowing it's sitting right next to them. SpongeBob is beating himself up, thinking they let everyone down. He talks about how they were doomed from the start because they're just children trying to do adult things. The guilt is eating him alive, even as he's literally dying. Patrick tries to stay positive at first, but then reality hits. When SpongeBob mentions they never made it to Shell City, Patrick keeps saying Shell City until he finally points to the sign showing they actually did make it. They realize they succeeded after all, and SpongeBob says, "We did all right for a couple of goofballs." This moment changes everything they went from thinking they failed to realizing they actually won. This leads to the most emotional moment. They both start singing the Goofy Goober song one last time as they slowly dehydrate and die together. "I'm a goofy goober, yeah. You're a goofy goober, yeah. We're all goofy goobers, yeah. Goofy, goofy, goober, goober, yeah." Their voices get weaker and weaker as they sing, but they keep going until they can't anymore. Each sheds a single tear that forms a heart shape when they meet, and then both friends die together. What makes Patrick's death so heartbreaking is how he handles it. Even while dying, he stays focused on comforting SpongeBob and helping him realize they actually accomplished their mission. Patrick doesn't complain about dying or blame SpongeBob for getting them into this mess. He could have been angry or scared, but instead he spent his final moments making sure his best friend knew they succeeded and that they should be proud of what they did. The scene worked because it showed Patrick's pure, selfless love for SpongeBob. Even facing death, Patrick's main concern was making sure SpongeBob didn't die thinking he was a failure. Their friendship was so strong that Patrick was willing to use his last breath to sing their favorite song together. It was the perfect example of true friendship being there for someone even in your darkest moment. Patrick proved that real friends stick together no matter what, even until the very end. Now, let's dive into one of Patrick's most devastating moments in Patrick SmartPants, when he loses his friendship with SpongeBob after becoming intelligent, leading to him tearfully looking back at their glory days and realizing what he's lost. The episode starts with SpongeBob and Patrick having their usual fun together, playing tag and jellyfishing at Jellyfish Fields. They're laughing, running around, and being their typical goofy selves. These two best friends are doing what they do best, being silly and enjoying each other's company without a care in the world. They're chasing jellyfish, telling jokes, and just having the time of their lives like they always do. But everything changes when Patrick runs toward a danger cliff sign while playing tag. He tries to read the sign as he's running, but crashes right through it and falls off the cliff. When SpongeBob finds him, Patrick's head has been knocked clean off his body. This should have been just another typical Patrick accident that they'd laugh about later, but this time was different. SpongeBob tries to help by putting Patrick's head back on, but he accidentally grabs brain coral instead of Patrick's real head. The moment this happens, Patrick's whole personality changes completely. He starts using big words, talking about science and nature, and loses interest in all the fun activities he used to love with SpongeBob. Patrick becomes stuck up and acts like he's better than everyone else, telling SpongeBob his jokes are dumb and that their games are childish. The really sad part is watching SpongeBob try so hard to connect with his best friend. He suggests all their favorite activities, jumping rope, playing games, telling jokes, but Patrick thinks everything is beneath him now. SpongeBob keeps trying different things to make Patrick laugh or have fun, but nothing works. You can see the confusion and hurt in SpongeBob's face as his best friend becomes a completely different person. The heartbreaking moment comes when Patrick officially ends their friendship. He tells SpongeBob they've grown apart and aren't compatible anymore. SpongeBob starts crying and reminds Patrick that he's his best friend, but Patrick acts cold and distant. SpongeBob walks away, sobbing, completely crushed that he's lost the most important person in his life. Patrick tries to make new friendships with Squidward and Sandy since he now shares their interests in music and science. For a moment, it seems like maybe Patrick found where he belongs. Squidward is excited to have someone who understands music, and Sandy enjoys talking about math and science, but Patrick's know-it-all attitude quickly drives them both away. He insults everyone around him and acts like he's smarter than them. Even his new smart friends can't stand him. The most emotional part happens when both friends sit alone looking through their photo albums. Patrick has a book called My Friend SpongeBob, and SpongeBob has one called My Friend Patrick. They're both looking at pictures of all the good times they had together, jellyfishing, playing games, going on adventures. Patrick looks at the photos and wonders why they grew apart, while SpongeBob cries over the memories. You can see tears dropping onto the photos, showing how much pain they're both feeling. This is when Patrick realizes that being smart doesn't matter if you're alone. He has all this knowledge and intelligence, but nobody wants to be around him because he's become mean and difficult. All his fancy words and big ideas can't replace the simple joy he used to have with his best friend. He's surrounded by books and science, but has no one to share anything with. Patrick becomes desperate to get SpongeBob back. He even kidnaps SpongeBob and tries to force them to have fun together like they used to. They go jellyfishing and try other activities, but Patrick can't enjoy simple things anymore. His brain keeps analyzing everything instead of just having fun. He keeps asking when the fun went away, showing how lost he feels. Finally, Patrick figures out that his intelligence came from the brain coral, not his real head. He realizes he has to choose between being smart or having his best friend back. Without hesitation, he chooses friendship. He gives up all his intelligence just to be SpongeBob's buddy again. This episode was devastating because it showed what happens when people change so much that they lose the relationships that matter most. Patrick's loneliness and regret were heartbreaking to watch. Another devastating moment we need to cover is in Valentine's Day, when Patrick has a complete meltdown and goes on a rampage because he thinks SpongeBob forgot his Valentine's gift, leading to one of the most heartbreaking displays of hurt feelings in the entire series. SpongeBob is busy giving Valentine's gifts to everyone in Bikini Bottom. He gives paper hearts to Squidward and Mrs. Puff, a tiny heart to Plankton, and a chocolate bubble for Sandy to eat. Everyone is getting something special from SpongeBob because he wants to make sure all his friends feel loved on Valentine's Day. But his biggest plan is something really amazing, a massive chocolate hot air balloon shaped like a heart just for Patrick. SpongeBob and Sandy work together on a big plan. Sandy will fly the chocolate balloon to the Valentine's Day carnival while SpongeBob takes Patrick there. The idea is that SpongeBob will get Patrick on the Ferris wheel, and when they reach the top, Sandy will fly in with the huge chocolate balloon as the perfect surprise. They think Patrick will be so happy and excited when he sees this amazing gift made just for him. Everything starts going wrong from the beginning. Patrick is making his own Valentine's Day gift, a heart made out of rock. When SpongeBob shows up, Patrick thinks SpongeBob is trapped inside the rock and smashes it to try to save him. This shows how much Patrick cares about SpongeBob and wants to help him. When SpongeBob tells Patrick he has a present for him, Patrick gets super excited. SpongeBob describes it as the greatest, bestest, most fantabulous present ever, which makes Patrick bounce around like crazy with joy. But then SpongeBob has to keep telling Patrick to wait because the present isn't ready yet. Patrick keeps asking, "Is it ready now?" over and over again. He's so excited he can barely contain himself. Patrick starts guessing what the gift could be. He thinks maybe SpongeBob got him the entire carnival, then maybe a quarter, then cotton candy. He even looks through a microscope and guesses it might be tiny sea creatures. His excitement is so pure and innocent, he just wants his best friend's gift so badly. The real problem starts when Sandy runs into chocolate-eating scallops that attack the balloon. These flying creatures start eating the chocolate and cause the balloon to lose air and go off course. Sandy has to fight them off with a whip, but this makes her really late for the plan. SpongeBob takes Patrick to the top of the Ferris wheel as planned, but Sandy still doesn't show up. Patrick is sitting there, waiting for his amazing present, getting more and more excited. With no other choice, SpongeBob has to lie to Patrick. Instead of the incredible chocolate balloon, he gives Patrick a friendly handshake. You can see how crushed Patrick is, but he tries so hard to be okay with it. This is the most sad part. Patrick sits on a bench and talks to himself, trying to convince his own heart that a handshake is good enough. He says things like, "A handshake doesn't seem like much, but it's the thought that counts." And even though I was expecting more, he's trying so hard to be happy and grateful, even though he's clearly hurt. But then people start walking up to SpongeBob, thanking him for amazing Valentine's gifts. Someone thanks him for a box of chocolates, another person thanks him for roses, and then a lady thanks him for a bike, and she says she just met SpongeBob that morning. Patrick has to sit there and watch his best friend give incredible gifts to strangers while he only got a handshake. This is when Patrick completely loses it. When a random person asks what time it is, Patrick throws them across the screen and screams, "Patrick needs love too." He goes completely crazy and starts destroying the entire carnival. He rips apart a guy dressed in a heart costume while yelling, "I defy you, Heartman." He tries to destroy rides that have hearts on them, and even takes a little girl's heart-shaped lollipop and breaks it while shouting, "Heart on stick must die." What makes this scene so heartbreaking is that Patrick's anger comes from real pain. He's genuinely hurt that everyone else got amazing gifts while he got almost nothing. When people try to give him gifts to calm him down, he says, "No, it's too late for that now," because the damage to his feelings has already been done. The episode shows how awful it feels to be left out when everyone else is being celebrated. Patrick's pain was so real that viewers couldn't help but feel terrible for him. Now let's talk about Patrick feeling completely worthless compared to SpongeBob in Big Pink Loser. This episode really shows how crushing it feels when you realize your best friend is way more successful than you'll ever be. Patrick wakes up one morning and finds a shiny trophy in his mouth. He's so excited he can barely contain himself. He runs around showing everyone the jellyfish, his rock, even jumps out of the water to show an island. For once in his life, Patrick thinks he actually won something. You can see how happy he is, and it makes what happens next even worse. SpongeBob looks at the trophy and sees his own name on it. The award was delivered to the wrong person. Patrick has to hand over the only trophy he's ever received, and you can see his heart breaking. But the real punch comes when Patrick accidentally opens SpongeBob's closet and hundreds of trophies come spilling out. Patrick just stands there staring at this mountain of awards, realizing he's never accomplished anything in his entire life. Patrick starts crying and says, "I want an award." The way he says it isn't bratty or demanding, he sounds genuinely hurt. He tells SpongeBob he's never done anything worth recognition. And honestly, he's right. While SpongeBob has been winning awards left and right, Patrick has been sitting under a rock, doing nothing. The comparison hits him hard, and you can't help but feel bad for the guy. SpongeBob tries to help by getting Patrick a job at the Krusty Krab. This is where things get really painful to watch. Patrick fails at every single task. When he's supposed to deliver food to customers, he eats it instead. When people call asking for the Krusty Krab, he gets mad because he thinks they're calling him names. He doesn't even know that Krusty Krab is the restaurant's name. The worst moment comes when a customer asks Patrick if he just blew in from Stupid Town. Patrick's face just drops. You can see how much that comment hurts him. He's already feeling dumb, and now a stranger is basically confirming his worst fears about himself. Patrick gets so frustrated that he starts smashing the floor with a broom, making dust fly everywhere. SpongeBob finally gives Patrick the simplest job possible, opening a jar. Even this becomes a huge challenge. SpongeBob has to guide Patrick's hand step by step, like he's teaching a little kid. When Patrick finally opens the jar, he's so proud he celebrates like he scored a touchdown. The fact that opening a jar is his biggest achievement so far is both sweet and really sad. Patrick becomes so desperate for success that he starts copying everything SpongeBob does. He dresses like him, talks like him, even paints his rock to look like SpongeBob's pineapple house. When SpongeBob gets annoyed and calls him a big pink loser, Patrick doesn't even argue. He just accepts it because deep down he believes it's true. The copying gets so extreme that Patrick loses himself completely. He tells SpongeBob that he was never closer to getting an award than when he started being someone else. That's a really heavy statement. Patrick basically admits that being himself has never been good enough for anything. The episode ends with Patrick getting a trophy for doing absolutely nothing longer than anyone else. While this makes Patrick happy, there's something kind of sad about it too. His greatest accomplishment is being lazy, which isn't really something to be proud of. But for Patrick, any recognition is better than none. What makes this episode so powerful is how real Patrick's pain feels. Everyone has had moments where they felt like failures compared to their friends. Maybe your friend got better grades, or landed a better job, or just seemed to have their life more together. Patrick's breakdown over feeling worthless hits close to home for a lot of people. The episode also shows how comparison can destroy your self-worth. Patrick was perfectly happy being himself until he saw how many awards SpongeBob had. Suddenly, his simple life felt empty and meaningless. He became so focused on matching SpongeBob's success that he forgot who he was. This is why so many viewers felt bad for Patrick during this episode. His pain felt genuine, and his struggle to find purpose and recognition is something most people can relate to, even if they've never cried over a trophy. Now let's talk about Squidward. Be sure to subscribe to our channel. Let's start with one of the most heartbreaking moments where Squidward believes he accidentally gave SpongeBob a deadly pie bomb in Dying for Pie. This episode shows us a side of Squidward we rarely see: genuine remorse and panic over potentially hurting his annoying neighbor. The whole mess starts on Employee Brotherhood Day when everyone has to exchange homemade gifts. SpongeBob gives Squidward a sweater made from his own eyelashes, which is gross but incredibly thoughtful. Squidward, being lazy and selfish, doesn't want to make anything. He spots some pirate selling pies and buys one for $25 without asking questions. The pirates literally tell him the pies are bombs from a bomb factory, but when Squidward shows interest in buying one, they quickly backtrack and claim they were joking. Mr. Krabs decides to taste test the pie, and when a tiny crumb falls and explodes, blowing up half the Krusty Krab, everyone realizes what just happened. But here's the kicker: SpongeBob already ate the entire pie. Mr. Krabs tells Squidward that SpongeBob will explode when the pie reaches his lower intestine, giving him until sunset to live. The doctor confirms this has happened 11 times before, and there's nothing they can do. Watching Squidward's reaction is genuinely painful. This guy, who usually can't stand SpongeBob, suddenly breaks down when he realizes what he's done. He starts crying and tells Mr. Krabs he wants to make SpongeBob's final hours the best he's ever had. The guilt hits him like a truck because SpongeBob made him that sweet, disgusting eyelash sweater out of pure friendship, and Squidward repaid him by basically poisoning him. What follows is actually beautiful in a twisted way. Squidward goes through SpongeBob's entire friendship list, doing ridiculous activities he would normally hate. He shows SpongeBob to everyone in town while wearing a salmon suit, lets SpongeBob perform surgery on him, and even does knock-knock jokes. You can see Squidward is miserable doing all this stuff, but he pushes through because he genuinely feels terrible about what happened. The most emotional part comes during the sunset scene. SpongeBob says if he were to die in some fiery explosion due to a friend's carelessness, watching this sunset would be perfect. Squidward starts tearing up because he knows that's exactly what's about to happen. When SpongeBob mentions something hit his lower intestine and starts counting down to the sunset, Squidward is practically having a panic attack behind his brick wall. When the explosion happens and Squidward thinks SpongeBob is dead, he breaks down completely. He sobs and says at least he made SpongeBob's last hours meaningful, calling himself a good person. For a brief moment, Squidward shows real humanity and regret. You actually feel sorry for this usually selfish character because his guilt seems so genuine. The twist ending where SpongeBob reveals he saved the pie to share with Squidward adds another layer. SpongeBob's pure intention to share the pie makes Squidward's guilt even more justified. SpongeBob never ate the bomb, he kept it because he wanted to enjoy it with his friend. This makes everything Squidward went through even more tragic because it was all based on a misunderstanding. This episode works because it shows what Squidward is capable of when he thinks he's truly hurt someone he cares about, even if he won't admit he cares. His breakdown feels real because voice actor Roger Bumpass really sells the emotion. You see past Squidward's usual grumpiness to someone who actually has a conscience and can feel genuine remorse. The reason viewers felt bad for Squidward here is seeing him step completely outside his comfort zone and sacrifice his dignity to make someone else happy, even though the whole situation was his fault for being lazy and not paying attention to what he was buying. His reaction showed he's not completely heartless. When he thought SpongeBob was going to die because of his carelessness, Squidward became a different person entirely. Moving on to another devastating Squidward moment when his marching band completely falls apart before their big Bubble Bowl performance in Band Geeks. This episode is painful because we see Squidward's biggest dream getting crushed by the incompetence of everyone around him. The setup makes Squidward's eventual heartbreak even worse. His old rival, Squilliam Fancyson, calls to brag about leading a fancy band that's supposed to play the prestigious Bubble Bowl. When Squilliam offers Squidward the chance to replace them, clearly expecting him to admit he doesn't have a band, Squidward's pride kicks in. He lies and says he does have a band, then immediately realizes he has to actually create one. Squidward puts up flyers around town promising people they'll be forever adored by thousands if they join his band. You can see he's genuinely excited about this opportunity. It's his chance to finally prove he's a real musician and show up his smug rival. For once, Squidward has something to work toward that he actually cares about. The first rehearsal is a disaster. None of these people have any musical experience. Patrick asks if mayonnaise is an instrument, the drummers think drumsticks are mouth instruments and pin Squidward to the wall, and Sandy beats up Patrick and shoves him through a trombone. But Squidward keeps trying because this means everything to him. Day 2 gets worse when the flag twirlers spin so hard they fly into a blimp and explode, killing them. Day 3 shows Plankton exhausting himself trying to play a harmonica that's way too big for him. By day 4, Squidward is desperate. He tries the theory that playing loud will make them sound good, but they play so badly they break all the windows and deform his face. The breaking point comes when everyone starts fighting. Harold and Mr. Krabs get into it about big meaty claws, and soon the whole band is using their instruments as weapons. Squidward tries to stop the brawl, but nobody listens to him. When the clock hits 10 p.m. and everyone just leaves, Squidward finally snaps, and his breakdown speech is absolutely crushing. He tells them they took his one chance at happiness and crushed it into little tiny bite-sized pieces. The way he says it with tears in his eyes shows just how much this meant to him. This was about proving to himself that he could accomplish something meaningful in music. When Squidward says, "I really expected better of you people," and calls himself a loser for believing in them, you feel the full weight of his disappointment. He tells them not to bother showing up and that he'll just say they all died in a marching accident. The fact that he's willing to lie rather than admit failure shows how much his pride is wrapped up in this. What makes this so heartbreaking is that Squidward actually put in real effort. He rented instruments, made uniforms, wrote music arrangements, and spent days patiently trying to teach these people basic skills. He pushed through every disaster because he believed this was his shot at greatness. When it all falls apart, you see how crushed he is. The episode becomes famous for its happy ending, where the band secretly practices and performs Sweet Victory perfectly, but the emotional core is Squidward's devastating failure speech. Viewers felt bad for him because for once, he was working towards something bigger than himself and got completely let down by people who didn't take it seriously. His dream of musical success, his rivalry with Squilliam, and his desperate need for recognition all come crashing down in that moment. Even though Squidward can be selfish and mean, seeing someone's genuine passion project destroyed by others' incompetence hits hard. Everyone's felt that disappointment when people don't match your energy for something you care deeply about. Let's jump into one of the most quietly devastating moments in SpongeBob history when we see Squidward crying at a gravestone that reads, "Here lies Squidward's hopes and dreams in one crab's trash." This brief scene hits harder than most people realize because it shows just how deeply Squidward has given up on life. The scene happens when Mr. Krabs goes to the cemetery looking for Smitty Werbenjager-Manjenson's grave to get back that valuable soda hat. As he's wandering around this creepy graveyard at night, he spots Squidward walking up to a tombstone with flowers in his hands. Squidward places the flowers on the grave and just stands there crying before walking away. When Mr. Krabs goes to check what grave had Squidward so emotional, he reads the inscription, "Here lies Squidward's hopes and dreams." This moment works so well because it comes out of nowhere. The episode is mostly about Mr. Krabs being greedy and fighting skeletons for a hat, but then we get this random glimpse into Squidward's inner pain. The writers didn't need to include this scene. It doesn't move the main plot forward at all, but they put it in there anyway, and that makes it even more powerful. What makes this so heartbreaking is how matter-of-fact it is. Squidward isn't dramatically sobbing or making a big scene. He's just quietly mourning at this grave like it's a regular thing he does. This suggests he comes here often to grieve for everything he's lost or never achieved. The fact that he brought flowers shows this is a ritual for him, not just a one-time thing. The gravestone itself is brutal. Most people bury their dreams metaphorically, but Squidward literally made a grave for his. He took the time and money to get an actual tombstone made with those exact words. That's not something you do on impulse, that's the result of years of disappointment and giving up. He's so convinced his dreams are dead that he gave them a proper funeral. Think about what this means for Squidward's character. This is a guy who still plays clarinet every day, still tries to create art, still dreams of being famous. But deep down, he's already accepted that none of it will ever happen. He keeps going through the motions while knowing it's hopeless. That's a special kind of torture that a lot of adults can relate to. The timing makes it even sadder. Mr. Krabs sees this and his only reaction is to call Squidward a baby. He doesn't show any sympathy or understanding, just dismisses Squidward's pain as pathetic. This shows how alone Squidward really is. Even when someone witnesses his most vulnerable moment, they just mock him for it. What's really twisted is that Squidward probably feels better after visiting this grave. It's his way of acknowledging his pain instead of pretending everything is fine. Most people bottle up their disappointments, but Squidward found a way to honor his grief. In a weird way, that's actually healthy, even if it looks depressing. The scene also works as dark comedy. The idea of someone making a literal grave for their hopes and dreams is so over the top that it's funny, but it's also genuinely sad. That's classic SpongeBob finding humor in real human suffering without making fun of the suffering itself. This moment became iconic because it captures something universal. Everyone has dreams that didn't work out, goals they gave up on, or talents they never got to use. Squidward's grave represents all of that disappointment that adults carry around. Most people just push those feelings down, but Squidward gave them a proper burial. The image of that gravestone became a meme because people related to it so much. They started using it to represent their own dead dreams or failed projects. It became a symbol for giving up, but also for acknowledging that giving up hurts. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to admit that some dreams really are dead. What's particularly cruel is the contrast between this scene and the rest of the episode. While Squidward is dealing with real emotional pain, Mr. Krabs is literally fighting cartoon skeletons over money. The episode treats Mr. Krabs' silly adventure as the main story, but Squidward's quiet moment of grief is what actually matters. It shows how people's real struggles often get overshadowed by louder, more dramatic problems. The cemetery setting adds another layer of sadness. Squidward is surrounded by actual dead people, but he's mourning something that was never really alive, his potential. His hopes and dreams never got the chance to become reality, so they died before they could truly live. That's almost worse than losing something you actually had. At the end of the episode, we see Squidward walking past Mr. Krabs with flowers in his hand, presumably heading back to the cemetery. Even after all the chaos with the skeleton army and the valuable hats, Squidward is still focused on his personal grief. His problems don't go away just because the episode's main plot got resolved. Viewers felt bad for Squidward because this scene showed him at his most human. Usually he's just the grumpy neighbor who hates SpongeBob's enthusiasm. But here we see that his grumpiness comes from real pain. He's protecting himself from more disappointment. When you understand that his negativity is really about self-preservation, it's hard not to feel sorry for the guy. Now let's talk about when Squidward finds his supposedly perfect community in Tentacle Acres during Squidville, only to discover that getting everything you think you want can leave you feeling completely empty. This episode shows how isolation, disguised as paradise, can be its own special kind of hell. The setup makes Squidward's eventual loneliness even more tragic. SpongeBob and Patrick destroy his house with their reef blowers, and Squidward finally snaps. He's had enough of living next to these two idiots, so when he sees a commercial for Tentacle Acres, a gated community exclusively for octopuses like him, it seems like the answer to all his problems. Tentacle Acres looks perfect on the surface. Everyone is exactly like Squidward. They play clarinet, do interpretive dance, eat canned bread, and ride bikes in formation. There's no SpongeBob ruining his day, no Patrick being stupid, just peace and quiet with people who understand him. For the first time in years, Squidward feels like he belongs somewhere. But that's where the horror really begins. At first, Squidward loves the routine. He wakes up, rides his bike with everyone else, goes grocery shopping, does interpretive dance, and plays clarinet in the park. Day 2 is exactly the same. And he's still happy. But as the days keep repeating with no variation whatsoever, something starts to die inside him. The episode shows this brilliantly through the montage where Squidward goes through the same exact routine over and over. At first, he's smiling and excited. Then he starts looking bored. By the end, he's completely miserable doing the same activities that once brought him joy. The music even becomes distorted and creepy as his enthusiasm fades away. What makes this so sad is that Squidward got exactly what he asked for. He wanted to be around people like him, and that's exactly what happened. But being around people exactly like you means no surprises, no challenges, no growth. Everyone thinks the same thoughts, has the same opinions, and does the same things. There's no friction, but there's also no life. The real gut punch comes when Squidward tries to quit the clarinet trio early and just walks away. Nobody follows him or asks if he's okay. They just keep playing without him. In his old life, even though SpongeBob annoyed him, at least SpongeBob cared about him. These people who are supposedly his perfect neighbors don't even notice when he's gone. Sitting on that park bench, Squidward realizes he's trapped himself in too much paradise. He thought happiness meant getting away from chaos and being around people who understood him. Instead, he discovered that a life without any conflict or unpredictability is just a different kind of prison. You need some chaos to feel alive. The moment when Squidward hears the reef blower and thinks it might be SpongeBob shows how desperate he's become. The same sound that used to drive him crazy now represents hope and excitement. He misses the very thing he ran away from, because at least SpongeBob's chaos made him feel something. When Squidward starts playing with the reef blower himself, he's basically becoming SpongeBob. He's doing the same childish thing that made him angry before, but now it's his only escape from the suffocating perfection around him. The other residents react to his behavior exactly the way he used to react to SpongeBob, with annoyance and disgust. The mob scene is brilliant because it shows Squidward finally understanding what he put SpongeBob through. These octopuses treat him like a troublemaker for having fun, the same way he treated SpongeBob. But instead of learning to appreciate differences like SpongeBob did, they just want to kick him out. They have no tolerance for anyone who doesn't fit their narrow definition of acceptable behavior. The security guard scene at the beginning shows how exclusive and judgmental this community is. They literally ask Squidward if he's ever been a sponge or starfish, treating those as disqualifying characteristics. This isn't about creating a peaceful community, it's about keeping certain types of people out. That kind of exclusivity always comes with a price. When Squidward breaks free and flies away yelling, "Freedom!" it's one of the most cathartic moments in the series. He's escaping the trap of thinking that happiness comes from avoiding everything that challenges you. Sometimes the things that annoy you are also the things that make life worth living. The episode's ending is perfect because SpongeBob and Patrick can't even recognize Squidward among all the identical octopuses. This shows how conformity erases individuality. Squidward thought he wanted to blend in, but being indistinguishable from everyone else made him disappear entirely. What's really clever about this episode is how it shows that Squidward's problems weren't really about SpongeBob and Patrick. His issues were internal, his inability to appreciate what he had, his constant need for everything to be perfect, his refusal to embrace chaos and spontaneity. Moving away didn't solve those problems, it just revealed them more clearly. The commercial for Tentacle Acres is also telling. It specifically targets people who are desperate to move, suggesting this place attracts people running away from their problems rather than people genuinely seeking community. It's a place for escapists, not people looking to build real relationships. Viewers felt bad for Squidward because this episode showed how loneliness can disguise itself as belonging. He thought he found his people, but sameness isn't the same thing as connection. Real relationships require differences to work. You need someone to challenge you, surprise you, even annoy you sometimes. Without that friction, you're just surrounded by mirrors of yourself, and that's the loneliest feeling in the world. Let's dive into one of Squidward's most crushing public failures when he gets pelted with tomatoes during his interpretive dance performance at the Krusty Krab talent show in Culture Shock. This episode shows how badly things can go when your biggest dream becomes your worst nightmare in front of everyone you know. The whole thing starts when business is slow at the Krusty Krab and Mr. Krabs needs a gimmick to bring in customers. Squidward sees this as his big chance and suggests hosting a talent show. He claims it will bring culture to Bikini Bottom, but really, he just wants his moment in the spotlight. From the beginning, you can tell this is all about his ego. Squidward treats this talent show like his personal showcase. He tells all the other performers that this is his shot at the big time, not theirs. When SpongeBob shows him a bubble dancing act, Squidward shoots it down and calls it uncultured. He basically turns SpongeBob into his janitor for the night. The guy is so focused on his own success that he can't see how selfish he's being. The night of the show arrives and the Krusty Krab is packed. This is everything Squidward has been dreaming of, a full audience ready to see his artistic genius. But the other acts are complete disasters. Pearl's cheerleading routine launches everyone into the air with each jump. Gary does poetry that's just meowing. Plankton tries to steal a Krabby Patty during his magic act and fails. By the time Squidward takes the stage, the crowd is already tired and annoyed. But Squidward doesn't care, he's finally getting his moment. The Squidward Live sign lights up like he's a superstar. He comes out in a blue leotard, ready to show everyone his interpretive dance skills. The audience immediately stops clapping and just stares at him confused. Squidward starts dancing to classical music with flowing, graceful movements. For a moment, you almost think this might work out, but then the music switches to weird techno beats and Squidward's dancing becomes completely bizarre. He's making strange noises, flailing around and moving like he's having some kind of breakdown. The audience has seen enough. They start booing loudly and throwing tomatoes from the free salad bar at him. This is Squidward's worst nightmare. His performance is a failure and he's being publicly humiliated by the entire town. Mr. Krabs even starts charging people $1 for tomatoes because they hate the act so much. What makes this so brutal is that Squidward genuinely believes he has talent. He really thinks this dance will prove he's a sophisticated artist. When the crowd boos, he calls them bottom feeders who don't understand real talent. He's so delusional that he blames the audience instead of accepting that his performance was terrible. The really cruel part happens right after. SpongeBob comes out to mop up the tomatoes and the audience suddenly loves it. They cheer for SpongeBob's cleaning skills while completely ignoring Squidward. Every time Squidward tries to get back on stage, the crowd goes silent. But the moment SpongeBob appears, everyone cheers again. This episode works because it shows Squidward at his most vulnerable. His whole identity is built around being more sophisticated than everyone else in Bikini Bottom. When his big moment to prove that falls apart so badly, it destroys everything he believes about himself. The town actively hates his art and mocks him. What's even sadder is that Squidward learns nothing from this experience. At the end, Mr. Krabs is planning next week's show, and Squidward just sighs in defeat. He doesn't grow or change, he just has to live with the fact that his biggest chance ended in complete humiliation. The final shot shows SpongeBob getting flowers from the cheering crowd, while Squidward watches from the sidelines, forgotten. Viewers felt bad for Squidward because everyone has experienced that feeling of putting yourself out there only to fail publicly. Most people's embarrassing moments happen in front of friends, but Squidward's disaster was witnessed by his entire community. His artistic dreams got crushed in the most public way possible, and there's no recovering from that kind of humiliation. Moving on to another devastating moment for Squidward when he becomes homeless after being falsely accused of stealing Mr. Krabs' first dime in Can You Spare a Dime? This episode shows how fast your whole life can fall apart when you stand up for yourself at the wrong time. Everything starts during closing time when Mr. Krabs discovers his lucky first dime is missing from the register. Since Squidward worked the register all day, Mr. Krabs immediately assumes he stole it. He doesn't investigate or consider other possibilities, he just accuses Squidward based on nothing but suspicion. He makes Squidward swear on dance magazines and brings out a lie detector. Think about this from Squidward's perspective. He's worked for this cheap boss for years, dealing with his penny-pinching nonsense. He's been a loyal employee who shows up every day to a job he hates. And this is the thanks he gets being accused of theft over a dime he never saw. When Mr. Krabs says there are 3 possibilities, you stole it, or you stole it, Squidward finally snaps. Squidward quits on the spot and storms out with big dreams about becoming a football player, king, or spaceman. For once, he's taking control and refusing to be pushed around. He tells SpongeBob the whole town will be eating out of the palm of his hands. He's finally going to show everyone what he's capable of. But reality hits hard. The next time we see Squidward, he's living in a cardboard box on the street, begging for spare change. All his dreams came to nothing. Nobody would hire him or buy his paintings. He went from having a steady job and home to being completely homeless in just a few days. The scene where SpongeBob finds him is heartbreaking. Squidward is so ashamed that he tries to hide in his box. Then a repo man takes away even his cardboard shelter. Squidward breaks down crying, calling himself a loser who lost everything. When SpongeBob asks about his paintings, Squidward admits he had to eat them because nobody would buy them. SpongeBob invites Squidward to stay at his house until he gets back on his feet. Squidward promises it'll just be for a day or two and says he won't be a burden. At this point, you really feel bad for him and hope he can turn his life around. But months pass, and Squidward becomes completely dependent on SpongeBob's kindness. He gets breakfast in bed, massages, and basically turns SpongeBob into his personal servant. He becomes increasingly demanding, complaining about lemonade having 3 seeds, making SpongeBob wear a maid outfit, waking him up at night for stupid requests. When SpongeBob tries to hint that he should look for work, even spelling out "get a job" in alphabet soup, Squidward ignores every suggestion. What started as helping a friend becomes SpongeBob being taken advantage of in his own home. Even Gary can see that Squidward is freeloading. The situation gets so bad that even SpongeBob finally loses his temper. When Squidward demands he fix a broken remote, SpongeBob snaps and starts yelling about how people with jobs fix things. He's been pushed to his limit by months of being treated like a servant. SpongeBob physically pushes Squidward's bed out of his house and to the Krusty Krab. In one of the most satisfying moments in the series, SpongeBob grabs Mr. Krabs by the throat and calls him a crustaceous cheapskate for destroying someone's life over a stupid dime. And of course, it turns out Mr. Krabs had his first dime the whole time. A giant prehistoric coin falls out of his pants when SpongeBob is shaking him. Squidward never stole anything. He was falsely accused, lost his job, became homeless, and had his life destroyed because Mr. Krabs couldn't check his own pockets. The episode ends with Squidward getting his job back, but there's no real justice. Mr. Krabs doesn't apologize for the false accusation or acknowledge the damage he caused. He immediately starts suggesting Squidward planted the dime in his pants, showing he learned nothing. Viewers felt bad for Squidward because this situation was fundamentally unfair. He was right to quit when falsely accused and right to defend his integrity. Standing up for yourself should be rewarded, not punished, but here it led to homelessness and suffering. The episode shows how one person's greed and paranoia can destroy someone's entire life, and how desperation can turn victims into people who take advantage of others. Moving on to one of Squidward's biggest backfires when his real estate agent rejects his house sale because of SpongeBob and Patrick's antics during opposite day. This episode shows what happens when your plan to get rid of annoying neighbors ends up trapping you with them forever. The whole mess begins when SpongeBob and Patrick throw Squidward a surprise birthday party that isn't even on his birthday. They wake him up early, force him to play pin the tail on the seahorse, and basically drive him crazy with their fake celebration. Squidward has had enough and decides he's moving out of Bikini Bottom for good. He calls a real estate agent to sell his house so he can escape his nightmare neighbors once and for all. But here's where things get tricky. The real estate agent warns him that bad neighbors can ruin a house sale. She says she's seen deals fall through because of troublesome people living nearby. This gives Squidward a terrible idea. Since SpongeBob and Patrick always do the opposite of what good neighbors would do, maybe he can use that to his advantage. Squidward tells SpongeBob it's opposite day, hoping this will make him act quiet and boring for once. The plan seems to work at first. SpongeBob says he's going to crawl into bed and do nothing all day. But then Patrick shows up and doesn't know about opposite day. SpongeBob explains the rules to him, and soon they're both doing all sorts of backwards activities like talking in reverse and acting like Gary's pets. Everything goes wrong when SpongeBob decides to fix his house by destroying it. He and Patrick completely wreck the pineapple, turning it into a skeleton of a house with debris everywhere. When Squidward sees this disaster, he panics because he knows the real estate agent is coming. He grabs a bulldozer and starts frantically rebuilding SpongeBob's house to make the neighborhood look presentable again. But SpongeBob notices that Squidward is acting like him, so he decides he needs to act like Squidward to be properly opposite. He puts his belt around his head to look like Squidward's nose and starts talking in Squidward's voice. Patrick joins in, and soon they're both pretending to be Squidward and calling each other Mr. Squidward. When the real estate agent arrives, SpongeBob and Patrick are already inside Squidward's house pretending to be him. They give her the worst possible tour, describing all the negative things about the house like creaky floors, leaky roofs, and a man eating clam in the backyard. They do everything wrong. SpongeBob plays clarinet badly, Patrick bursts through a painting, and they completely confuse the poor woman. When the real Squidward shows up and tries to explain, the situation gets even worse. Now there are 3 people all claiming to be Squidward. The real estate agent finally loses it and screams, "I'm Squidward, so are there any other Squidwards I should know about?" Right then, Gary appears with a pickle on his face, looking like Squidward and meowing in his voice. This is the last straw for her. The real estate agent storms out, telling Squidward she wouldn't sell his house if he was the last Squidward on Earth. All his hopes of escaping are crushed because his own plan backfired spectacularly. SpongeBob and Patrick cheerfully tell him, "Happy opposite day, we hate you," while Squidward realizes he's stuck with these neighbors forever. In his rage, Squidward grabs the bulldozer and chases SpongeBob and Patrick down the street, screaming, "Happy opposite day!" The episode ends with him pursuing them in fury while they run for their lives, asking if Squidward likes them too much. Viewers felt bad for Squidward because his plan was actually smart. He understood his neighbor's behavior and tried to use it strategically, but his cleverness backfired in the worst possible way, and he ended up more trapped than before. Watching someone's escape plan destroy itself is genuinely painful, especially when they brought it on themselves by being too clever for their own good. Now let's talk about when Squidward gets completely humiliated by his high school rival Squilliam at the Krusty Krab in Squilliam Returns. This episode shows what happens when your biggest insecurity meets your worst nightmare in the most public way possible. And the trouble starts during Squidward's lunch break when he runs into Squilliam Fancyson, his arch rival from high school. Squilliam is bragging to a group of people about his private yacht, private lake, and private island. When Squidward tries to hide his Krusty Krab uniform, Squilliam immediately spots him and asks what he's accomplished since high school. This is Squidward's worst fear coming true, facing his successful rival while stuck in a dead-end job. Squidward panics and makes a huge mistake. Instead of telling the truth about working at the Krusty Krab, he lies and says he owns a 5-star restaurant. Squilliam is impressed and announces that he and his friends will come eat there tonight. Squidward's face turns into a mask of terror when he realizes what he's gotten himself into. Desperate to avoid humiliation, Squidward begs Mr. Krabs to let him transform the Krusty Krab into a fancy restaurant for one night. Mr. Krabs agrees because he wants to impress the wealthy Squilliam, but turning the Krusty Krab into fine dining with this crew is like trying to turn a garage band into a symphony orchestra in 20 minutes. Everything goes wrong immediately. Patrick shows up thinking he's joining the military and gets assigned to collect hats, but he starts beating up the coat rack when it won't give him its hat. Mr. Krabs claims he was a chef on the SS Gourmet, but he makes terrible food like peas still in the can and a disgusting appetizer that looks like it has flies and other gross things in it. Then he admits he was actually just a janitor on the Gourmet and the head chef on the SS Diarrhea. SpongeBob tries to learn fancy waiting from a book, but he gets overwhelmed by all the information and starts acting like a zombie. Squidward tells him to empty his mind of everything except fine dining and breathing. The episode shows SpongeBob's brain like an office where tiny SpongeBobs throw away all his memories and knowledge, including his own name. But somehow, this actually works. When Squilliam arrives, the Krusty Krab has been magically transformed into an elegant restaurant with fancy wallpaper, a chandelier, and a string orchestra. SpongeBob, now in a tuxedo, provides perfect service and treats Squilliam like royalty. Everything is going perfectly, and Squidward finally gets to humiliate his rival. Squidward makes Squilliam read a card saying, "Squidward Tentacles has the fanciest restaurant in Bikini Bottom and he does not suck eggs," over the restaurant's loudspeaker. This should be Squidward's moment of triumph, but then disaster strikes. Squilliam asks SpongeBob his name and SpongeBob can't remember it because he threw out that memory along with everything else. SpongeBob's brain completely breaks in half trying to find his name. He goes insane and starts dumping soup on customers, grating people's butts with cheese graters, and causing total chaos. Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs' evil appetizer comes to life and chases everyone out of the restaurant. The fancy decorations fall apart, revealing the regular Krusty Krab underneath. With his cover blown, Squidward has to admit the truth: he's just a cashier and everything was fake. Squilliam pretends to confess that he's also a cashier and was lying about being rich, giving Squidward a moment of hope. But then, Squilliam reveals he was just kidding and really is filthy stinking rich. He leaves with his friends to go ride in his balloon casino while Mr. Krabs plays the world's smallest violin for Squidward's failure. This episode hits hard because Squidward actually succeeded for a brief moment. He managed to turn the Krusty Krab into a real fancy restaurant and was finally impressing his rival, but his success was built on erasing SpongeBob's personality, and when that artificial foundation cracked, everything came crashing down. Viewers felt bad for Squidward because everyone understands the pain of running into someone from your past when your life isn't going well. His lie about owning a restaurant was pathetic, but it came from a real place of insecurity and shame. Watching him get so close to redemption only to have it fall apart in the most embarrassing way possible was genuinely heartbreaking. Sometimes our attempts to impress others just make us look more foolish than if we'd been honest from the start. Now let's move to Sandy, but be sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Moving on to Sandy's heartbreaking homesickness in the episode Texas, where she almost leaves Bikini Bottom forever. This episode shows what it's like when someone feels completely lost and alone, even when surrounded by friends. The episode begins with Sandy, SpongeBob, and Patrick playing at the beach. Sandy makes a sand sculpture of Texas, but a wave comes and destroys it. She sadly says, "It's nothing but a memory now," and walks away looking really upset. When SpongeBob tries to cheer her up by suggesting karate or jellyfishing, Sandy just isn't interested in anything. SpongeBob tries everything to make Sandy happy. He wants to play karate, but she says she's not feeling up to it. He tries to get her to go jellyfishing, but she doesn't want to do that either. Usually Sandy loves these activities, but today she can't even fake being excited about them. You can tell something is really wrong with her. The real gut punch comes when SpongeBob releases a jellyfish and tells it to go back to where you belong and hurry before they forget you and leave you behind. He says, "There's no place like home," without realizing how much those words hurt Sandy. She starts crying so much that her helmet fills with tears. She has to use a toilet handle to drain all the water out. When SpongeBob asks why she's crying, Sandy lies and says her helmet just sprung a leak. But then she admits the truth: she's homesick. This leads to SpongeBob and Patrick trying to help by blindfolding her and taking her to her own tree dome, thinking that would make her feel better. Instead, it makes things worse, and Sandy runs inside crying. Then comes the most emotional part of the episode. Sandy climbs on top of her tree dome with a guitar and sings a song called "I Wanna Go Home." The song is so sad that everyone in Bikini Bottom starts crying. She sings about missing the wide open skies, her 20 acres, barbecues, and pecan pies. The song is so powerful that even Mr. Krabs at the Krusty Krab starts crying and gets hit by his own cash register. The song shows how deep Sandy's pain really is. She's missing her whole identity. In Texas, she was part of something bigger. In Bikini Bottom, she's the only land animal in a world of sea creatures. She feels like she doesn't belong anywhere, and that loneliness is eating her alive. What makes the song even sadder is that she mentions specific things she misses. It's not just general homesickness. She misses barbecues with friends, pecan pies her family probably made together, and those big Texas skies that made her feel free. In Bikini Bottom, everything is underwater and cramped. She can't see the horizon or feel the wind. She's trapped in a glass dome while everyone else swims freely around her. After the song, Sandy decides she's had enough and packs her bags to move back to Texas. She tells SpongeBob and Patrick that it's time for this tumbleweed to tumble on home. She gets on a bus to leave Bikini Bottom forever. This is someone giving up on their new life because the pain is too much. Sandy has clearly been thinking about this for a while. She has her bags packed and ready to go. She's thought about it and decided that staying in Bikini Bottom hurts too much. She'd rather give up all her friendships and start over than keep feeling this lonely and out of place. But then Patrick accidentally saves the day by calling Texas dumb. This makes Sandy so angry that she gets off the bus to defend her home state. SpongeBob realizes they can use this to their advantage, so he and Patrick keep insulting Texas to make Sandy chase them to the Krusty Krab, where they've prepared a surprise party. The chase scene is pretty funny, but also shows how much Sandy loves Texas. She becomes incredibly fast and strong when defending her home. She lassos Patrick and creates a nuclear explosion in the background. She karate chops through rocks and almost kills SpongeBob and Patrick just for making fun of her state. Her love for Texas is so strong it makes her superhuman. The party is sweet, but shows how much SpongeBob misunderstood what Sandy was missing. He has square dancing with a guy holding a cube, barbecue with someone holding sharp letter Qs, and 10-gallon hats made from water jugs. Everything is wrong, but Sandy starts laughing because she realizes something important. Sandy explains that home isn't about barbecues or pecan pies, it's about being around people who care about you. She looks around at all the townspeople who work together to throw her this party and realizes that Bikini Bottom has become her real home. These people might not understand Texas, but they understand her enough to try. This episode hits so hard because Sandy's homesickness is real and deep. She's missing feeling like she belongs somewhere. Everyone who's ever moved far from home or felt like an outsider can relate to Sandy's pain. The fact that she almost left everything behind shows how powerful homesickness can be. People felt bad for Sandy because her sadness was so genuine. When she sang that song, you could feel how much she was hurting inside. She wasn't being dramatic or seeking attention, she was just a lonely person trying to figure out where she belonged in the world. The episode shows that sometimes the people who seem the strongest are actually struggling the most inside. Now let's talk about Sandy's obsession with finding SpongeBob before hibernation in pre-hibernation week. This episode shows what happens when someone gets so worried that they go completely crazy and make everyone else's life miserable. Sandy is rushing around doing chores because she only has 1 week before hibernation. She's cleaning everything and moving super fast. When SpongeBob asks why she's hurrying, Sandy says she'll be sleeping all winter and wants to have as much fun as possible. SpongeBob promises to spend all his free time with her. But Sandy's fun activities are absolutely nuts. They go sandboarding down mountains so fast that Sandy catches fire. They play extreme jacks with bowling balls that smash SpongeBob's head. They ride bikes through dangerous factories with crushing machines. SpongeBob keeps getting hurt really badly, his arm falls off, he turns into ice, and needles pop his nose like a balloon. Sandy is so focused on cramming in every possible activity that she doesn't notice SpongeBob is basically dying. When they go sandboarding, SpongeBob crashes into a snowman and breaks bones that stick out of his body. When they do extreme jacks, a bowling ball cracks Sandy's helmet, but she just keeps going. She's like a machine that can't be stopped. SpongeBob is getting destroyed, but can't tell Sandy he wants to stop. When he tries to talk, his mouth melts from stress. Sandy just drags him to more crazy games like finding hay in a pile of sharp needles. SpongeBob gets stabbed hundreds of times while Sandy cheers. She's so excited about having fun that she can't see her friend is in pain. The activities get more and more dangerous. They ride a tandem bike through an industrial park with barbed wire and conveyor belts that lead to giant crushing machines. Sandy thinks this is the most fun ever, while SpongeBob is literally melting from fear and exhaustion. She even wants to go fly fishing from an airplane. Finally, SpongeBob can't take it anymore and hides under Patrick's rock. But when Sandy finds his clothes stuck on a bush, she thinks something bad happened to him. This is where Sandy completely loses it. She forces the whole town to search for SpongeBob in the most dangerous places ever. Sandy makes everyone search sulfur fields where toxic gas blasts people in the face. She sends them to poison sea urchin areas where they get covered in stinging creatures. She forces them to check a leech farm where they get attacked by blood-sucking bugs. She even makes them go into what they think is a cave, but it's actually a giant monster's mouth. The search gets completely out of control. Sandy organizes the town like a military operation with different teams searching different areas. She has people crawling through sewers, checking dangerous caves, and looking in places that could kill them. All because she's panicking about SpongeBob being missing. The town has been searching for days and everyone is exhausted. They beg Sandy for breaks and say they need to take care of their kids, but Sandy won't let anyone leave until they find SpongeBob. She's basically become a dictator who rules through fear. When people try to trick her with fake SpongeBobs like a cereal box or a banana, she gets really angry. Sandy even suggests using children to crawl into small spaces that adults can't reach. She's so obsessed with finding SpongeBob that she's willing to put kids in danger too. The townspeople are getting desperate and scared of what Sandy might make them do next. Everyone is so tired of Sandy's crazy behavior that they all hide under Patrick's rock with SpongeBob. They feel safe from Sandy's madness, but then SpongeBob accidentally says something that reveals he's there. The townspeople are so mad at him for causing this whole mess that they throw him out to deal with Sandy. When Sandy finds SpongeBob, she's super happy and wants to drag him off for more dangerous activities called atom smashing. But SpongeBob finally breaks down and tells her he can't do the crazy games anymore. He literally rips his own nose off to show how the activities are hurting him. Just as he's begging Sandy to still be his friend, she falls asleep because hibernation starts. This episode works because it shows how good people can become monsters when they panic. Sandy just wanted to spend time with her friend before sleeping all winter, but her worry about SpongeBob turned her into someone who made the whole town suffer for days. She forced innocent people into deadly situations because she couldn't handle losing her friend. People felt bad for Sandy because she wasn't trying to be mean. She was just scared about hibernation and wanted to make the most of her time. But they also felt bad for everyone else who got caught up in her craziness. The whole thing got out of control because Sandy couldn't deal with her feelings in a normal way. Sometimes caring too much can be just as harmful as not caring at all. Now let's talk about when Sandy became the victim of SpongeBob's mean-spirited squirrel jokes in the episode Squirrel Jokes. This episode shows how comedy can quickly turn into bullying when someone becomes the target of everyone's laughter. The episode starts at the Krusty Krab's new comedy show called The Comedy Crab. SpongeBob gets his chance to perform, but his original jokes about salt, tomatoes, and forks are terrible. The crowd is booing him, and even Patrick is joining in. SpongeBob is bombing on stage and desperately needs something to save his act. Then SpongeBob notices Sandy's big front teeth and makes a joke about how you could land a plane on those things. The crowd actually laughs. Desperate for more laughs, SpongeBob starts making more jokes about squirrels saying they smell bad, have fleas in their fur, and are really stupid. The audience loves it, and SpongeBob finally feels like a successful comedian. After the show, Sandy confronts SpongeBob backstage and tells him the jokes are hurtful, but SpongeBob brushes off her concerns, saying it's just an act and everyone knows she's the smartest person in Bikini Bottom. Sandy tries to be understanding and says she was being too sensitive. She even hugs SpongeBob and says no hard feelings. But the damage is already done. The next day, Sandy goes shopping and people start treating her differently. Fish walk by making comments about how she should buy deodorant because squirrels smell. A group of guys sees her and calls her the stupid squirrel. Then start talking to her like she's mentally disabled, making dumb faces, and using baby talk. The worst part happens when Sandy tries to talk to a little kid, but the mother grabs her child and says, "Don't stand too close to a squirrel, you'll catch it stupid." This shows how SpongeBob's jokes have made people think Sandy is actually contagious with stupidity. Sandy sadly says stupidity isn't a virus, but it sure is spreading like one. Sandy goes back to SpongeBob before his next show and explains that people are treating her differently because of his jokes. She asks him to tell other jokes instead. But when SpongeBob tries his old material about goldfish and water, the crowd demands more squirrel jokes. Faced with choosing between his friend and his career, SpongeBob initially leaves the stage, but then comes back with fake buck teeth and a southern accent to tell even more squirrel jokes. The breaking point comes when Sandy writes SpongeBob a note saying she finally understands how funny his jokes are and invites him to her tree dome to celebrate. When SpongeBob arrives, Sandy is acting exactly like his jokes portrayed her as a stupid, smelly hillbilly with flies buzzing around her. She glues SpongeBob to a log, takes his water helmet to use as a flower vase, and when he starts dehydrating, she connects a hose to his mouth and fills him with so much water, he expands to fill the entire tree dome. Only after SpongeBob promises to stop telling squirrel jokes does Sandy turn off the water. At the next comedy show, SpongeBob finally does the right thing by making fun of everyone equally: squirrels, sponges, crabs, and fish. The crowd laughs at themselves and Sandy gives SpongeBob a thumbs up, showing their friendship is restored. This episode works because it shows how harmful stereotypes can spread through harmless comedy. Sandy went from being respected as the smartest person in town to being treated like a disease-carrying idiot, all because SpongeBob needed some laughs. People felt bad for Sandy because she experienced real discrimination and social isolation just for being different. The episode perfectly captures how comedy can cross the line from funny to cruel, and how the target of jokes rarely finds them as amusing as everyone else does. Moving on to when SpongeBob and Patrick invade Sandy's tree dome during hibernation in Survival of the Idiots. This episode shows what happens when people completely ignore boundaries and make someone else pay for their selfish actions. SpongeBob and Patrick are excited to visit Sandy, but when they get to her tree dome, it's covered with metal walls and has a keep out sign. Inside the entrance, they find a TV that plays a video message from Sandy. She's wearing pajamas and eating tons of acorns, explaining that she's hibernating for the winter. She clearly says that animals don't like being woken up during hibernation and asks people not to disturb her, specifically mentioning SpongeBob by name. But Patrick completely ignores Sandy's wishes and opens the door anyway. The tree dome is full of snow, which excites both of them. They take off their water helmets because the snow provides moisture and start playing around. When they hear strange noises from Sandy's treehouse, they go inside to investigate. They find Sandy sleeping in bed, but hibernation has made her huge and bear-like from eating all those acorns. She's talking in her sleep about catching outlaws named Dirty Dan and Pinhead Larry. SpongeBob and Patrick think it's funny and start acting out her dream, pretending to be the criminals she's trying to catch. Their noise wakes Sandy up and she attacks them in her sleepy state, giving them both massive wedgies and threatening to skin them. She falls back asleep, but the guys realize they need to keep her quiet. Patrick makes earmuffs out of his belly button lint, and SpongeBob puts them on Sandy so she won't wake up again. Now they feel safe to play in the snow and continue pretending to be outlaws, but their game turns into a real fight when both of them want to be Dirty Dan. They start hitting each other with snow weapons, making so much noise that Sandy's earmuffs fall off. This wakes her up again and she's furious. Sandy grabs Patrick, rips the top of his head off, and demands to know which one is the real Dirty Dan. When Patrick admits it's him, she backhands him so hard he flies across the tree dome. Then she goes after SpongeBob, calling him Pinhead Larry. She chases him around the tree dome, destroying everything in her path while he runs for his life. When SpongeBob and Patrick try to leave, they discover the door is frozen shut and they're trapped until spring. Hours pass and they're both freezing and covered in snow. SpongeBob tries to get bark from Sandy's tree to make a fire, but sleeping Sandy threatens to put him in an iron lung if he touches it. Desperate to stay warm, they realize Sandy's fur is what keeps her comfortable. They sneak into her room and start ripping off her fur while she sleeps. Every time they pull off a piece, Sandy roars and goes back to sleep. Eventually, they cover themselves in her fur and feel warm again. But winter suddenly ends and spring arrives. Sandy wakes up excited about the warm weather, but when she comes outside and sees SpongeBob and Patrick wearing her fur, she looks down at herself and realizes she's completely bald. She screams in horror and then gets furious at what they've done to her. As punishment for stealing her fur, Sandy makes SpongeBob and Patrick wrap themselves around her body like a living fur coat. She sits there drinking lemonade while they're forced to keep her warm until her real fur grows back. They're basically turned into human clothing as payment for their selfishness. People felt bad for Sandy because she did everything right. She clearly told them not to disturb her, left a video message explaining why, and even put up warning signs. But SpongeBob and Patrick completely ignored her boundaries, invaded her private space, destroyed her property, and literally ripped the fur off her body while she was helpless. Sandy became a victim in her own home because two people decided their fun was more important than her clearly stated wishes. Another time we felt bad for Sandy was when she faced losing her funding from the chimpanzee scientists in Chimps Ahoy. This episode shows what happens when your entire career and future depend on impressing the wrong people at the wrong time. Sandy is in full panic mode when SpongeBob and Patrick arrive at her tree dome. Her lab is a mess with broken inventions scattered everywhere. She explains that her boss's 3 chimpanzee scientists who fund her research are coming for an inspection that afternoon. If they don't like what she's invented, they'll cut her funding and she'll have to leave Bikini Bottom forever. The problem is that all of Sandy's inventions are pretty useless. She shows SpongeBob a helmet that lets you talk to nuts, but what's the point of that? She has a machine that makes coffee out of any nut you want, but it basically tortures the nuts by grinding them up while they scream. Her automated nutcracker can't even crack a single nut, it just gives up after trying once. Sandy is convinced she's a failure and starts singing a sad song about having to leave Bikini Bottom. She's genuinely heartbroken because this place has become her home, but if she can't prove her worth as a scientist, she'll lose everything. The pressure is real because these chimps hold her entire future in their hands. SpongeBob and Patrick decide to help by creating their own invention. Patrick keeps suggesting things that already exist, like pencils and light bulbs, calling them his own ideas. Eventually, they build something called the Automatic Back Scratcher, Hair Comber, Nose Picker, and Ukulele Tuner 9000. It's basically held together with bandages, tape, and bubble gum. When the chimps arrive, they're clearly sophisticated scientists who take their work seriously. Professor Percy, Dr. Marmalade, and Lord Reginald introduce themselves formally and want to see what their research money has been funding. SpongeBob and Patrick present their crazy invention as Sandy's work. At first, the machine actually works perfectly. It scratches Lord Reginald's back, combs his hair, picks his nose, and even feeds him pudding. The chimps seem impressed, and Sandy might actually keep her job, but then everything goes horribly wrong when the machine tries to tune a ukulele. The invention completely malfunctions and starts attacking Lord Reginald with saws, fire, scissors, and other dangerous weapons. He's screaming in terror while the machine goes berserk. When Sandy hears the noise and comes running, she finds Lord Reginald being spit out of the machine, battered and bruised. The chimps are disgusted and immediately decide to shut down the tree dome. Dr. Marmalade even questions why they're funding underwater research at all. Sandy is devastated because she's about to lose everything, and it's not even because of her real work. It's because of SpongeBob and Patrick's disaster of an invention. But then something amazing happens. Dr. Marmalade pulls out a banana to eat, and Sandy's broken nutcracker suddenly springs to life and perfectly peels the banana. The chimps get incredibly excited because they realize this is actually a banana peeler, something they've been searching for 117 years. The chimps are so thrilled with this discovery that Professor Percy offers Sandy a 20-year contract with a big pay raise. What Sandy thought was her biggest failure turns out to be exactly what the scientific community needed. She gets to stay in Bikini Bottom and continue her research, all because of an invention she thought was worthless. People felt bad for Sandy because the whole situation was completely unfair. She's a brilliant scientist who creates amazing things, but she was judging herself by the wrong standards. Her inventions weren't useless, they just weren't what she expected them to be. The pressure from the chimps made her doubt her own abilities and almost cost her everything she'd worked for. Sometimes the things we think are failures turn out to be exactly what the world needs. Next up is when everyone in town is terrified of Sandy's pet caterpillar Wormy in the episode Wormy. This episode shows how fear and misunderstanding can destroy an entire community, leaving Sandy to come home to complete chaos. Sandy asks SpongeBob and Patrick to pet sit while she's out of town for a few days. She shows them all her different animals: a bird, a cricket, a snake, and a small caterpillar named Wormy in a jar. Sandy says Wormy doesn't eat much and will be the easiest pet to take care of. SpongeBob and Patrick immediately fall in love with Wormy. They spend the whole day playing with him, having the time of their lives. They play hide and seek, run around the tree dome, and SpongeBob even makes Wormy a best friend ribbon. It's one of those perfect days that you never want to end. But overnight, Wormy undergoes metamorphosis and turns into a butterfly. When SpongeBob and Patrick come back the next morning, they can't find Wormy anywhere. All they see is this monster flying around the tree dome. When they open Wormy's jar, they find his empty chrysalis and the friendship ribbon, leading them to believe this creature ate their friend. The episode uses real footage of a horsefly's face to show what SpongeBob and Patrick see when they look at the butterfly close up. It's genuinely terrifying. All they see are huge buzzing eyes and sharp mouth parts. To them, this isn't a beautiful butterfly, it's a horrifying monster that devoured their best friend. SpongeBob and Patrick try to protect Sandy's other pets by trapping the monster. They use Patrick as bait and try to catch it with nets, but nothing works. Finally, SpongeBob traps the butterfly in a bubble and releases it outside the tree dome, thinking he's saving everyone. But now the monster is loose in Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob and Patrick chase after it and find it heading toward the Krusty Krab. They burst in to warn Mr. Krabs and Squidward, who are doing a photo shoot with Mr. Krabs' first dollar. At first, both of them laugh at the tiny butterfly and mock SpongeBob and Patrick for being scared. Then Mr. Krabs and Squidward see the close-up footage of the horsefly face. They immediately scream in terror, their teeth and eyes fall out, and they run away so fast they leave their underwear behind. SpongeBob and Patrick think the monster ate them too. This is where things get completely out of control. SpongeBob and Patrick start warning everyone in Bikini Bottom about the monster. They put up warning posters, use megaphones, and tell everyone to run for their lives. The entire town panics and starts running around screaming. The chaos gets so bad that buildings catch fire and the whole city is destroyed. There's a news report about the giant monster attacking Bikini Bottom while people are literally running through walls in terror. A meteor even hits a building during all the mayhem. What started as one butterfly flying around becomes a full-scale disaster that ruins the entire town. Meanwhile, Sandy has no idea any of this is happening. She's been out of town enjoying her trip, while her home is being destroyed by mass hysteria. When she finally returns, she finds Bikini Bottom in ruins with smoke and fire everywhere. She even comments that it looks like a tornado hit the place, but then Sandy sees Wormy flying around and immediately recognizes him. She says, "You weren't supposed to change until I got back," and calmly puts him in a jar. Just like that, the monster is captured and everyone comes out of hiding to cheer. Sandy thinks they're just excited to see her and considers going out of town more often. People felt bad for Sandy because she came home to find her town destroyed and had no idea why. Her innocent pet caterpillar had caused citywide panic just by going through natural metamorphosis. Sandy trusted SpongeBob and Patrick to take care of her pets, but their fear and ignorance led to the destruction of everything she knew. She missed all the chaos and came back to find her friends traumatized and her community in ruins, all because nobody understood basic biology. Moving on from Sandy, now let's talk about Mr. Krabs, but don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Let's dive into when Mr. Krabs loses SpongeBob in a card game and sings a heartbreaking duet in Welcome to the Chum Bucket. This episode shows what happens when someone's greed and overconfidence costs them the thing they value most. Mr. Krabs has been playing poker with Plankton every Thursday night for 15 years, and he's never lost a single game. He's so cocky about his winning streak that he tells SpongeBob how he's been taking Plankton to the cleaners all these years. Mr. Krabs thinks Plankton is the worst card player in Bikini Bottom and sees these games as easy money. But this time, Mr. Krabs gets too confident and makes a terrible bet. Instead of betting money, he bets SpongeBob's employment contract. He's so sure he'll win that he risks the one employee who actually makes his restaurant successful. When SpongeBob finds out what Mr. Krabs wagered, he's shocked that his boss would risk losing him to someone as evil as Plankton. The next morning, Mr. Krabs shows up to work crying and tells SpongeBob he lost the card game. SpongeBob can't believe it at first and thinks Mr. Krabs is playing a cruel joke. But when Plankton shows up to collect his prize, the reality hits hard. SpongeBob doesn't want to work for Plankton and begs Mr. Krabs not to make him go. Both of them start crying and hugging while Plankton literally pries them apart with a crowbar. The most heartbreaking part comes when SpongeBob is forced to work in the Chum Bucket's cold, sterile kitchen. He misses the warmth and familiarity of the Krusty Krab so much that he can't function. Then the episode breaks into a beautiful but sad duet called "This Grill Is Not a Home." SpongeBob sings about how the Chum Bucket kitchen doesn't feel like home, while Mr. Krabs sings about how much he misses SpongeBob and would trade everything to have him back. The song shows both characters at their lowest points. SpongeBob is trapped in a place that feels like jail, and Mr. Krabs is alone in his restaurant, realizing he's lost the heart and soul of his business. They both sing about how nothing feels the same without each other, and you can hear the genuine pain in their voices. Finally, Plankton can't take SpongeBob's attitude anymore and literally begs Mr. Krabs to take him back. He's crying and says he can't stand SpongeBob. Mr. Krabs makes Plankton pay $50 for the privilege of returning SpongeBob, and Plankton gladly agrees. People felt bad for Mr. Krabs because his own greed and arrogance caused him to lose the most important thing in his life. The duet scene shows just how much Mr. Krabs actually cares about SpongeBob beyond just making money. For once, we see Mr. Krabs genuinely regretting putting profit over people, and his tears feel real instead of fake. Time to discuss when Mr. Krabs falls to his knees sobbing after thinking SpongeBob and Patrick were taken by hooks in the episode Hooky. This episode shows a side of Mr. Krabs we rarely see: genuine fear for someone else's safety. The episode starts with Mr. Krabs rushing into the Krusty Krab in a complete panic, warning everyone about the return of fishing hooks. He tells SpongeBob that hooks are extremely dangerous and will drag you to the surface where you'll be cooked, eaten, or sold in gift shops. Mr. Krabs is genuinely terrified of these things and wants to protect his employees from them, but SpongeBob doesn't listen. When Patrick shows up claiming there's a carnival in town, SpongeBob abandons his work to go play. The carnival turns out to be the field of fishing hooks that Mr. Krabs warned about. Patrick convinces SpongeBob that the hooks are harmless by showing him how you can ride them up and jump off before reaching the surface. Back at the Krusty Krab, Squidward is trying to cook, but he's terrible at it. The customers are complaining about the awful food, and Mr. Krabs finds out that SpongeBob took a break. He's furious because he says no employee has taken a break since the chum famine of '59. Mr. Krabs storms out to find SpongeBob and drag him back to work. When Mr. Krabs finds SpongeBob and Patrick playing on the hooks, he's absolutely horrified. He's genuinely scared for their lives. Mr. Krabs explains that if you don't jump off in time, you'll end up vacuum-packed in a tuna can with nothing to look forward to but the smell of mayonnaise. He makes both of them promise never to go near hooks again. The next day, SpongeBob tries to keep his promise, but Patrick pressures him to play hooky again. When SpongeBob and Patrick grab onto a hook together, Mr. Krabs sees them get pulled up toward the surface. He runs after them but slams into a rock and falls to the ground. Thinking they've been taken away forever, Mr. Krabs starts sobbing uncontrollably. He cries, "Boys, I wasn't quick enough, they're gone," and says if he could hold them in his arms again, he would. Then his sadness turns to anger as they float back down safely. But for those few seconds, Mr. Krabs was genuinely heartbroken, thinking he'd lost SpongeBob and Patrick forever. What makes this scene so powerful is that Mr. Krabs wasn't worried about losing employees or money. He was scared for SpongeBob and Patrick as people he cares about. When he thought they were gone, his first reaction wasn't anger about work being disrupted, it was pure grief over losing them. People felt bad for Mr. Krabs because his fear and grief were so genuine. He tried to protect SpongeBob from danger, but SpongeBob didn't listen. When Mr. Krabs thought his worst fears had come true, his emotional breakdown showed just how much SpongeBob and Patrick mean to him beyond just being employees. Finally, let's explore when Mr. Krabs feels old and irrelevant in midlife crustacean, leading to a deep depression about his age. This episode shows what happens when someone realizes they might be past their prime and desperately tries to recapture their youth. The episode begins with Mr. Krabs waking up to a radio song called "You're Old" that describes all the signs of aging. His joints crack when he moves, his eyes are crusty, and he can barely get out of bed. Pearl makes him breakfast and gives him a giant pill to swallow, treating him like an elderly person who needs constant care. When Mr. Krabs asks Pearl if she thinks he's old, she says of course, but explains that daddies are supposed to be old. She also tells him that nobody says cool anymore, now they say coral. But when Mr. Krabs tries to use the new slang, Pearl says he makes it sound uncoral, and immediately calls her friend to say that coral is now out of style. Things get worse when Mr. Krabs goes to work. A Boy Scout helps him cross the street without being asked, treating him like a helpless old man. When Mr. Krabs tries to walk away, his arm literally falls off. Kids won't let him join their ball game and complain that old people always have to ruin the fun. He even accidentally gets in line for the cemetery instead of the ice cream truck. At the Krusty Krab, a customer complains that his Krabby Patty is all old and dried out, and points directly at Mr. Krabs as an example. The customer throws the patty in the trash, and Mr. Krabs rescues it, saying they're two of a kind, because they've both lost their luster. The breaking point comes when Mr. Krabs overhears SpongeBob and Patrick planning a big night out. Desperate to feel young again, he begs to join them. The night out turns out to be incredibly lame activities like watching clothes spin in washing machines, picking up trash, and going to a children's arcade. Mr. Krabs gets increasingly frustrated and finally explodes, calling SpongeBob and Patrick lame, nerds, and babies. But when Patrick mentions a panty raid, Mr. Krabs immediately perks up because it sounds rebellious and exciting. They sneak into a house to steal women's underwear, and Mr. Krabs feels young again. But then the lights turn on, and it's revealed to be his mother's house. She grounds him and sends him to his childhood bedroom. People felt bad for Mr. Krabs because his struggle with aging is something everyone can relate to. He went from being confident and successful to feeling invisible and irrelevant. His desperate attempts to connect with younger people were both sad and embarrassing, showing that getting older can make you question your entire identity. Here we have when Mr. Krabs faces his own mortality in Born Again Krabs after eating a moldy Krabby Patty and nearly dying. This episode shows what happens when someone realizes their flaws might cost them everything, but struggles to actually change their nature. The episode starts with Mr. Krabs forcing SpongeBob to serve an old, moldy Krabby Patty that's been sitting under the grill for who knows how long. The patty is so rotten that it's literally growling like an animal and has to be kept in a cage. When no customers will buy it, Mr. Krabs decides to eat it himself to prove it's still good. Of course, he immediately gets food poisoning and ends up in the hospital. While Mr. Krabs is lying there sick, the Flying Dutchman appears to take his soul to Davy Jones's locker. The ghost pirate explains that Mr. Krabs is going to the underwater afterlife for bad sea creatures, because being cheap is a terrible thing. Mr. Krabs tries to lie about his identity, calling himself Harold Flower, but the Flying Dutchman sees right through it. When the Flying Dutchman shows him Davy Jones's actual locker, which is literally a gym locker full of smelly socks, Mr. Krabs breaks down completely. He gets on his knees crying and begging for another chance, even calling for his mommy. This isn't the tough businessman we usually see. This is a terrified old crab facing judgment for a lifetime of greed. The Flying Dutchman gives him one more chance, but only if he promises to always be generous and never cheap again. Mr. Krabs swears on his word as a sailor that he'll change. When he returns to the Krusty Krab, he genuinely tries to be a better person. He gives away free toys, offers unlimited refills, provides in meal movies for customers, and even lets Squidward take paid naps in his office. For a while, it seems like Mr. Krabs really has changed. He's happy to be generous and says it feels good to make people smile. But then reality hits when he opens his credit card bills and finds he owes $10,000 with no money in the register. When he realizes he's actually awake and not dreaming, his head literally cracks open from the shock. The tragic moment comes when Mr. Krabs sees a customer reaching for a penny on the ground. All his good intentions disappear instantly as his greed takes over. He grabs the man's arm and threatens to rip it off if he doesn't let go of the penny. The Flying Dutchman immediately appears, saying this display of cheapness has earned Mr. Krabs a permanent spot in Davy Jones's locker. What makes this episode heartbreaking is that Mr. Krabs was genuinely trying to change. He wasn't faking his generosity, he really did want to be a better person. But when faced with losing money, his addiction to greed was stronger than his desire to save his soul. Even the threat of eternal damnation couldn't overcome decades of selfish behavior. SpongeBob tries to defend Mr. Krabs by saying he's the most generous crab in the sea, but then the Flying Dutchman tests this by offering Mr. Krabs a choice: SpongeBob or 62 cents. Without hesitation, Mr. Krabs chooses the money. He literally sells his best employee's soul for pocket change, proving that he hasn't learned anything at all. The episode ends with the Flying Dutchman returning SpongeBob because he talks too much, but the damage is done. Mr. Krabs realizes what he's become and briefly feels ashamed, but by the next scene, he's already back to his old ways. People felt bad for Mr. Krabs because this episode showed his internal struggle between wanting to be good and being unable to change his fundamental nature. He knew his greed was wrong and desperately wanted to be better, but he was trapped by his own compulsions. Watching someone fail to overcome their worst impulses, even when their eternal soul was at stake, was genuinely tragic. The episode revealed that Mr. Krabs' cheapness is a serious moral failing that he can't seem to escape no matter how hard he tries. Now let's talk about when Mr. Krabs has a paranoid breakdown in Crabborg after SpongeBob and Squidward become convinced he's been replaced by a robot. This episode shows the psychological horror of having people you trust completely turn against you based on delusions. The episode starts with SpongeBob watching a scary movie called Night of the Robot about machines taking over the world. Even though Gary warns him not to watch it, SpongeBob stays up all night terrified and paranoid, wondering if everyone he knows might be a robot. The next day at work, he's jumpy and convinced that robots are everywhere. Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs is just having a normal day listening to a song called Electric Zoo on his radio. He likes the music and starts dancing to it in a robotic way, talks to his radio like it's a friend, and says he feels recharged after listening. He even calls the radio station, making beeping sounds to request the song again. To SpongeBob's paranoid mind, all of this looks like robot behavior. He becomes convinced that Mr. Krabs has been replaced by a machine and tries to convince Squidward. At first, Squidward thinks SpongeBob is being ridiculous, but then Mr. Krabs accidentally gets salt in his eyes and comes running out screaming with red eyes, tongs in his claws, and batteries in his pocket, looking exactly like the robot from the movie. This is where things get really disturbing. SpongeBob and Squidward tie Mr. Krabs up in his office and start interrogating him under a bright light. They demand to know what he did with the real Mr. Krabs and refuse to believe his protests that he is the real Mr. Krabs. They slap him repeatedly and threaten to dismantle him. Mr. Krabs becomes genuinely terrified and confused. He doesn't understand why his own employees think he's a machine and are treating him like a dangerous imposter. The psychological torture of having people you trust completely reject your identity and humanity is genuinely heartbreaking. He keeps insisting, "I am Mr. Krabs, but they won't listen. When SpongeBob and Squidward can't get information out of him, they start destroying his office equipment with a baseball bat, claiming they're interrogating his robot friends. They smash his blender, toaster, food processor, and coffee maker, while Mr. Krabs cries about how much money each one cost him. The breaking point comes when they threaten to destroy his cash register. Mr. Krabs starts sobbing and says he raised it from when it was just a little calculator and that he loved it like his own. This finally proves to Squidward that Mr. Krabs really is telling the truth, because robots supposedly can't cry or love. The episode ends with SpongeBob suddenly remembering that the movie revealed the robot invasion was all in the character's imagination. He realizes his mistake and runs away, leaving poor Squidward to face Mr. Krabs' fury alone as he screams, "Squidward!" in rage. People felt bad for Mr. Krabs because the psychological torture he endures is genuinely disturbing. Having people you trust turn against you and refuse to believe your identity while physically restraining and threatening you would be terrifying for anyone. The episode shows how paranoid delusions can make people do horrible things to innocent victims, and Mr. Krabs' confusion and fear throughout the ordeal is heartbreaking to watch. Finally, let's examine when Mr. Krabs loses his life's work in selling out and becomes a broken man begging to buy back what was stolen from him. This episode shows what happens when greed costs you everything that actually matters. The episode begins with Mr. Krabs having a great day at the Krusty Krab, singing about how much he loves money while counting his profits. Then Howard Blandy, the president of a corporate restaurant chain, walks in and offers to buy the Krusty Krab. At first, Mr. Krabs refuses because the restaurant represents his blood, sweat, and tears. But when Blandy shows him boatloads of cash, Mr. Krabs immediately sells out. At first, Mr. Krabs thinks retirement will be amazing. He plans to learn to ride a bicycle, visit the Hook Museum, and paint bowls of fruit. But after doing all these activities in just one morning, he realizes he's completely bored and has no purpose in life anymore. Even his daughter Pearl gets sick of him hanging around the house and tells him to get a job, hobby, or friends. Meanwhile, the new corporate owners transform the Krusty Krab into Krabby-O Mondays, a soulless chain restaurant with exercise bikes for employees, frozen processed patties instead of handmade ones, and corporate policies that destroy everything Mr. Krabs built. SpongeBob and Squidward are forced to wear new uniforms and follow thick employee manuals. The most heartbreaking part is watching Mr. Krabs see what they've done to his life's work. When he gets a job as a busboy at his old restaurant, he discovers they're making Krabby Patties on a conveyor belt using gray sludge that gets spray painted to look appetizing. The automated cash register he loved so much has been replaced with a computerized system. Mr. Krabs becomes genuinely angry when he realizes customers are being fed garbage and don't even know it. He shows a customer the gray sludge that goes into the patties, causing her to scream and run away. When more customers see what they're really eating, they all flee in disgust. The breaking point comes when Carl, the new manager, threatens Mr. Krabs for violating his contract by telling the truth about the food. Mr. Krabs explodes with rage, throws furniture around, and declares that Krabby Patties are supposed to be made by hand, one at a time. He shoves the cash register into the patty-making machine, causing the entire restaurant to explode. When Howard Blandy sees the destroyed restaurant, he decides to sell it back for a fraction of what he paid. Mr. Krabs uses all the money he got from selling the Krusty Krab to buy it back at full price, essentially getting nothing for losing his restaurant and having to rebuild everything from scratch. People felt bad for Mr. Krabs because his greed cost him everything he actually cared about. The money he got meant nothing compared to losing his identity and watching strangers destroy his life's work. Seeing him reduced to a busboy in his own restaurant, powerless to stop corporate executives from ruining everything he built, was genuinely tragic. The episode showed that some things are more valuable than money, and Mr. Krabs learned that lesson the hard way. Now let's move on to Plankton, but be sure to subscribe to our channel if you're enjoying our video. Let's start with when Mr. Krabs terrorizes Plankton with his whale phobia in one-course meal, driving him to near suicide. This episode shows what happens when someone uses your biggest fear against you as a weapon. Plankton launches another attack on the Krusty Krab with explosives and robot arms, trying to steal the formula like always. But when Pearl shows up during the fight, Plankton completely loses it and runs away screaming. Mr. Krabs sees this and realizes Plankton is scared of whales. Instead of just being happy his restaurant is safe, Mr. Krabs gets a sick idea. Mr. Krabs borrows one of Pearl's dresses and starts pretending to be her to scare Plankton. For 2 whole weeks, Mr. Krabs stalks Plankton everywhere, popping out of trash cans and sneaking into his restaurant while dressed as Pearl. He threatens to eat Plankton and makes whale noises to terrorize him. This is straight up psychological torture. Plankton explains that whales have been eating his family for generations, so this fear comes from real trauma. Mr. Krabs knows this and doesn't care. He keeps tormenting Plankton anyway, because he thinks it's funny. The constant fear breaks Plankton's mind. He stops taking care of himself, growing long hair and nails. He won't leave his chair because he's too scared to step into the light where the whale might see him. He starts wearing tissue boxes as shoes and becomes completely paranoid. Karen tries to tell him there are no whales around, but Plankton can't trust reality anymore. Plankton has horrible nightmares about being eaten alive. In his dreams, he falls into Pearl's stomach and meets his dead relatives who were also eaten by whales. He can't eat, sleep, or think straight because he's always terrified. This goes on for over 2 weeks while Mr. Krabs just laughs about it. And the worst part comes when Plankton gives up completely. He lies down in the middle of the road waiting for a bus to run him over. He's literally trying to kill himself because he can't handle being afraid anymore. When SpongeBob finds him, Plankton begs him to just step on him and end his suffering. SpongeBob tries to get Mr. Krabs to stop, but Mr. Krabs just laughs and says Plankton deserves it. He's actually enjoying watching someone have a mental breakdown and want to die. That's not funny or clever, that's just evil. SpongeBob finally tells Plankton the truth about Mr. Krabs wearing the disguise. Plankton gets revenge by using Mr. Krabs' fear of mimes against him, but the damage was already done. Nobody deserves to be tortured until they want to kill themselves, no matter what they've done before. People felt bad for Plankton because watching someone's mind break from constant fear is genuinely disturbing. Mr. Krabs crossed every line possible in this episode, and seeing Plankton reduced to a broken, suicidal mess was heartbreaking. Now let's move to when Plankton gets betrayed by SpongeBob and FUN. After seeming to want real friendship, this episode shows how cruel it can be when someone plays with your emotions. Plankton steals a Krabby Patty, but SpongeBob chases him down and gets it back. During the chase, Plankton breaks down crying and calls himself a loser. When SpongeBob tries to cheer him up, a bunch of people show up just to call Plankton names and laugh at him. SpongeBob feels bad and thinks maybe Plankton just needs a friend. Karen tells Plankton to fake being SpongeBob's friend so he can steal the formula later. But what makes this episode sad is that SpongeBob's friendship is completely real. He genuinely wants to help Plankton and show him what fun is like. SpongeBob takes Plankton jellyfishing and teaches him the FUN song. At first, Plankton just wants to use jellyfish as weapons to rule the world, but SpongeBob shows him that fun isn't about winning or controlling people, it's about enjoying simple things with friends. For the first time maybe ever, Plankton starts to understand what friendship feels like. He says he feels tingly inside and doesn't know if they should stop. SpongeBob tells him that's exactly how he's supposed to feel. They spend the whole day doing innocent stuff like picking flowers and playing music. Plankton even starts wearing square pants like SpongeBob. The heartbreaking moment comes at the movies when Mr. Krabs exposes everything. SpongeBob finds a Krabby Patty in Plankton's pocket and realizes he's been tricked. SpongeBob starts crying and asks how long Plankton was planning to betray him. When Plankton sees how hurt SpongeBob is, he starts tearing up too. Then comes the cruel twist. Plankton tells SpongeBob he did trick him to get the patty, but says that SpongeBob showed him friendship and now that's all he really wants. For a second, it seems like Plankton might choose friendship over being evil, but then Plankton reveals he was lying about wanting friendship. He grabs the patty and runs away laughing, saying being evil is too much fun. This destroys SpongeBob, who was just trying to help someone he thought was lonely. The really sad part is that Plankton seemed genuinely happy during their day together. He looked like he was actually enjoying friendship for the first time, but when it came down to choosing between SpongeBob and his evil plans, he picked being evil and ended up alone again. People felt bad for Plankton because the episode showed what he could be like if he just accepted kindness. His brief moment of seeming to want friendship made his final betrayal feel like he was hurting himself as much as SpongeBob. Time to explore when Plankton and Mr. Krabs' friendship was destroyed in Friend or Foe. This backstory episode shows how two best friends became enemies over something stupid. Mr. Krabs tells everyone that he and Plankton used to be best friends. They were born on the same day and grew up together. As kids, they were both outcasts who got picked on, but they had each other. When bullies stuffed Plankton into a straw and shot him at Mr. Krabs stood up for him. When kids made fun of Mr. Krabs for wearing clothes made from trash, Plankton was the only one who didn't laugh. They stayed friends and decided to start a business together. Both of them worked hard to create the perfect burger recipe. When the local burger place got shut down, they opened their own restaurant in the dump. At first, everything was great. Mr. Krabs made his first dollar, and Plankton was proud that people actually liked their food. But then their different personalities caused problems. Mr. Krabs became obsessed with money and wanted to get rich. Plankton wanted to use their success to rule the world. When they started fighting over who the recipe belonged to, it tore in half, and they both went flying to opposite sides of the restaurant. The real story comes from Karen's security camera footage. An old man tried their burger and got food poisoning because the recipe wasn't perfect yet. Instead of working together to fix it, they blamed each other. Mr. Krabs said Plankton put too much sauce in it. Plankton said Mr. Krabs let it sit out too long. Plankton stormed out in anger, and when he slammed the door, some ingredients fell into Mr. Krabs' cooking pot. This accident created the perfect Krabby Patty recipe that Mr. Krabs still uses today. So basically, their friendship was destroyed over a mistake that actually led to Mr. Krabs' success. The worst part is how pointless the whole fight was. They were best friends who cared about each other, but they let a business disagreement ruin everything. If they had just talked it out instead of getting angry, they might still be friends today. People felt bad for both of them because the episode showed they were genuinely close. Knowing they used to support each other through hard times makes their current hatred seem tragic and unnecessary. Their rivalry isn't based on being fundamentally different people, it's just the result of one bad day that got out of hand. Finally, let's discuss when Karen leaves Plankton in computer overload because she's tired of his incompetence. This episode shows what happens when you push someone too far. Plankton fails another scheme, and Karen makes fun of him for it. When a customer asks for Krabby products instead of Chum, Plankton has a meltdown about how nobody appreciates his cooking. Karen suggests he should stop obsessing over the formula and get a hobby, but Plankton takes this as an insult. Plankton starts attacking Karen personally, asking if she's there to help him or just make him feel small. He threatens to replace her and says she was just a bunch of wires when they first met. This is really cruel, because Karen has been supporting him through years of failures. Karen points out that Plankton can't even remember to blink without her help. She's right, he literally needs her to remind him to do basic things. But instead of being grateful, Plankton gets mad and decides to build replacement computers that he claims will be better than her. The replacement robots immediately start fighting each other and destroying the Chum bucket. When Karen tries to help by pressing a button, Plankton yells at her and gets smashed by his own invention. This proves Karen's point about how everything he tries goes wrong. The final straw comes when Plankton blames Karen for holding him back. He says if it wasn't for her constant stifling, he would have conquered the world by now. After years of supporting him through countless failures, Karen has finally had enough. Karen leaves a note saying she's joining another network because she can't handle Plankton blaming her for everything anymore. She tells him he's old enough to make his own mistakes and she's done being responsible for him. When Plankton finds the note, he tries to act tough and says he doesn't need her, but it becomes obvious that he's completely lost without her. He can't even remember to blink, and his plan to steal the formula fails when his robots run out of power. Plankton ends up crying alone in the wreckage, finally realizing how much he needed Karen. When she comes back just to get her stuff, he apologizes and admits he could never replace her. Karen takes him back, but their relationship is damaged. People felt bad for Plankton because the episode showed how his pride and inability to take blame had driven away the one person who truly cared about him. His loneliness without Karen revealed how much he actually depended on her, making his previous treatment of her seem even more sad and stupid. Moving on to when Plankton lives his worst nightmare in The Algae's Always Greener Sal 1 Teen Tom Teen Rides. This episode shows what happens when someone finally gets everything they think they want, only to discover it's actually hell. Plankton comes home from another failed attempt to steal the formula and immediately starts taking his anger out on Karen. He complains about eating holographic meatloaf while Mr. Krabs gets to eat real food and have a successful restaurant. Plankton wishes he could switch lives with Mr. Krabs just to know what it's like to be successful. Karen reminds him about a machine he built called the Switch Lives Just to Know What It's Like Omographier that can actually make this happen. Plankton gets excited and uses the device to swap lives with Mr. Krabs, thinking he's finally going to get everything he's ever wanted. When Plankton wakes up in Mr. Krabs' office, he's thrilled to discover the switch worked. He's now the owner of the Krusty Krab with access to all the Krabby Patties he wants, plus Mr. Krabs' wealth and success. At first, everything seems perfect when SpongeBob brings him 2 fresh Krabby Patties for bun inspection. But then, the nightmare begins. This alternate universe SpongeBob is completely different from the one we know. Instead of being cheerfully independent, he's clingy, needy, and desperate for approval. He begs for weekly performance reviews and won't leave Plankton alone. When Plankton casually mentions using too much sauce, SpongeBob has a complete breakdown and starts stuttering uncontrollably. Things get worse when Plankton promotes SpongeBob to co-cashier just to shut him up. This causes Squidward to storm into the office and demand that SpongeBob be moved away from him. But in this universe, Squidward isn't an employee. He's a demanding customer who complains about everything and treats Plankton like dirt. Then Pearl shows up, and she's even more annoying than usual. She calls him daddy repeatedly while bouncing him around, demands money, and when he only gives her $1, she cries giant tears that nearly drown him. Every aspect of Mr. Krabs' life that Plankton thought would be great turns out to be torture. The final straw comes when the alternate Mr. Krabs appears. In this universe, Krabs is tiny like Plankton, and he's the one trying to steal Krabby Patties. But unlike Plankton's constant failures, this tiny Krab succeeds easily, swinging around naked on ropes and escaping with a patty while everyone screams in terror. What makes this truly heartbreaking is watching Plankton realize that even when he has every advantage, the formula, the restaurant, the size, the resources, he's still a failure. The alternate Krabs accomplishes in minutes what Plankton has been trying to do for years. Even in his own dream scenario, he's still the loser. The worst part comes when Krabs promises to come back tomorrow and the next day and the next day to steal more patties. Plankton realizes he's trapped in an endless cycle of being tormented by everyone around him. His dream of success has become a waking nightmare that will never end. Plankton finally snaps and screams that it's not worth it. He rips off his clothes and uses the machine to switch back to his old life, saying he'll remember everyone in therapy. When he returns to the chum bucket and sees his holographic meatloaf, he's actually happy and calls it his favorite. People felt bad for Plankton because the episode showed the tragic irony of getting what you wish for. His greatest dream turned into his worst nightmare, proving that he doesn't actually want success, he just wants to escape his own miserable reality. Watching someone discover that even their wildest dreams can't fix their fundamental problems is genuinely depressing. That's the end of today's video. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed our video.